60. Count them out slowly, and it takes almost a full minute just to reach the end. 60 separate promises, 60 distinct assurances, 60 times that the God who made the stars and named them one by one has bent down toward frightened human beings and said, in one form or another, do not be afraid. 60 is not a random number. It is the number of a thing made complete and then multiplied. 6, the number of man and his labor and his limitation, lifted into 10, the number of fullness and set into the rhythm of time itself. There are 60 seconds in every minute you have ever lived through, 60 minutes in every hour you have ever waited out in a hospital corridor. 60 minutes in every sleepless hour you have ever spent staring at the ceiling while the fears of tomorrow press down on your chest like a physical weight. And here is what we are going to do together over the hours ahead. For every one of those anxious minutes, for every tick of the clock that has ever carried dread instead of peace, we are going to place a promise. 60 of them. One for every reason you have ever had to be afraid of what is coming. Because something is coming, isn't it? That is why you are here. It is not an abstraction for you. There is a specific thing on the horizon of your life right now. A diagnosis you are waiting on, a bill you cannot see how to pay, a conversation you are dreading, a door that is closing, a child who has wandered somewhere you cannot follow, a body that is aging faster than your plans accounted for. A future that used to feel open and now feels like a narrowing hallway with no lights on. The fear of what is coming is one of the oldest and heaviest burdens the human heart can carry because it steals from you a thing you can never get back. It steals the present moment. It takes today, which may in fact be perfectly fine, perfectly survivable, even quietly full of small mercies. And it fills today with the poison of a tomorrow that has not even arrived and may never arrive in the form you fear. Anxiety is, at its root, the act of suffering something twice, once in the dread of it, and possibly again in the living of it. And God, who loves you more than you have the capacity to imagine, does not want you to suffer it twice. He does not even want you to suffer it once alone. So he made promises, not vague reassurances, not the empty comfort of a well-meaning friend who says, I'm sure it'll all work out while having no power whatsoever to make it work out. God made promises backed by the full weight of his character, his track record, his covenant faithfulness stretching back through every generation of frightened people who came before you and found him to be exactly what he said he was. The Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, is in one sense a single long record of God making and keeping promises to people who were afraid. Afraid of famine, afraid of enemies, afraid of death, afraid of the future, afraid most of all that they had been forgotten, that in the vast machinery of the universe, their small and trembling life had slipped through the cracks and no one was watching over it anymore. And to every one of them, in every century, God said the same essential thing that he is saying to you right now, today, through this teaching. I see you. I have not forgotten you. I know what is coming because I am already there. And I am telling you the truth when I tell you that you do not need to be afraid. Over the next several hours, we are going to walk through 60 of these promises. We will take them slowly, one at a time, the way you would sip something warm on a cold night rather than gulp it down. We are not going to rush. Rushing is the language of anxiety, and we are learning a different language here, the unhurried language of trust. We are going to look at where each promise was first spoken, and to whom and in what circumstance, because these words were not born in comfortable rooms. They were forged in exile and famine and prison and exile and the shadow of death. They were spoken to slaves and refugees and widows and condemned men and terrified fishermen and a young girl who had just been told her whole life was about to be turned upside down. These are not soft promises made to people who had it easy. These are battle-tested promises, proven under the exact kind of pressure you are under right now. And every single one of them still holds. Not one of them has expired. Not one of them was rescinded. They are as alive and as available to you tonight as they were on the day they were first spoken, thousands of years ago, to someone whose name you may not know, but whose fear you would recognize instantly, because it was the same fear you carry. Before we begin, let me say something to you plainly, from the heart. If you have found your way to this teaching today, I don't believe it is an accident. I believe God has a way of putting the right words in front of the right person at exactly the moment they need them most. You may have come here looking for background noise, for something to fill the silence while you did the dishes or drove home or tried to fall asleep. But I think you came looking for something more than that, even if you couldn't have named it. I think part of you is tired of being afraid. I think part of you is ready to set the weight down, at least for a while. And remember that you are held by something stronger than whatever is coming. And I think, over these next hours, if you'll let these promises go down deep, past your ears, past your busy, anxious mind, all the way down into the place where your fear actually lives, something in you is going to begin to settle. Not because your circumstances will necessarily change tonight, but because you will remember promise by promise that you were never facing them alone. Now, before we open the first promise, I want to ask you one simple thing, and then we won't interrupt the teaching again for a long while. If a channel like this one is a place you want to keep coming back to, a steady place to return to each week when the world gets loud and your heart gets heavy, then all I ask is that you subscribe. That's the only thing. It costs you nothing at all. It's completely free, a single tap of your finger, and then it's done. But here is what it means. It means that the next time we release a teaching like this, the next time these words are ready for someone who is lying awake afraid, you won't drift away and miss it. It will find you. You'll be here. Because the truth is, teachings like this one arrive quietly, and if you're not subscribed, the moment passes and you never even know what you missed. So take 1 second, tap subscribe below this video and keep your seat here among us. That's all. And while you're there, before we begin, I'd love for you to do one small thing in the comments. Drop a single word for what you are carrying into this teaching tonight. Just one word. The weight you're hoping to set down. Fear, waiting, grief, money, health. Whatever it is, put the one word down where the rest of us can see it, and let this become a room full of people who came here carrying something and are about to lay it down together. Now, let's begin. Settle in wherever you are. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears, unclench your hands, and let the first promise come. The first promise, fear not, for I am with you. We begin where God himself so often begins, with the simplest and most repeated promise in all of Scripture, and also the deepest. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 41, verse 10, God speaks these words to a people who had every earthly reason to be terrified. Fear not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Consider first who was listening when these words were spoken. This was not a comfortable audience. Isaiah was speaking to the people of Israel about a coming exile, a national catastrophe in which their city would be broken, their temple burned, and the survivors marched hundreds of miles from home to live as captives in a foreign land under a foreign king who worshipped foreign gods. If ever a people had reason to be afraid of what was coming, it was these people. The future they faced was not imaginary, it was real, and it was terrible, and it arrived exactly as it had been foretold. And yet here, on the very edge of that darkness, God does not say, there is nothing to fear. He never says that. God is honest about the reality of the storm. What he says instead is infinitely more powerful. I am with you in it. Notice the structure of the promise, because it is a masterpiece of comfort, built like a staircase descending gently into a frightened heart. First, the command, fear not. Then immediately the reason, for I am with you. God never issues the command to not be afraid without immediately attaching the ground on which that fearlessness can stand. He does not expect you to manufacture calm out of nothing, to grit your teeth and simply decide to feel better. He gives you a reason strong enough to actually carry the weight. I am with you, not I will send help from a distance, not I will watch from heaven and hope for the best. I, the living God, the maker of everything you can see and everything you cannot, am with you. Present tense. Right now. In the room. In the waiting. In the hospital. In the empty house. In the hour when you cannot sleep. Then the promise deepens further. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. The word dismayed means something specific. It means to be so overwhelmed that you look around frantically for a way out and find none. It is the panic of being trapped. And God's answer to that panic is not a strategy or an escape route. His answer is a relationship. I am thy God, yours. Not a distant deity presiding over the universe with cold indifference, but your God, personally, in covenant with you, committed to you the way a father is committed to a child. He will not abandon no matter what comes. And then, 3 times in a row, like a hand reaching down and taking firm hold, he tells you what he will actually do. I will strengthen thee. I will help thee. I will uphold thee. 3 verbs, 3 actions. Strength for when you feel too weak to face it. Help for when the task is beyond you, and upholding, that beautiful word, for when your own legs will not hold you up any longer, when you have reached the end of your own capacity to stand, and something outside of you must bear your weight, or you will fall. I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. The right hand, in the language of Scripture, is the hand of power. God is telling frightened people that the same infinite strength that flung the galaxies into space and holds every atom in its place is the strength that is, right now, reaching under your arms and holding you up when you cannot stand on your own. So take this first promise and hold it against whatever is coming for you. Whatever it is, and it may be very real as an exile. The promise does not pretend the storm is not a storm. It simply, immovably declares that you will not face it alone, that the God who is with you is stronger than the thing you fear, and that his hand is already underneath you, holding you up. Fear not because there is nothing frightening, but because you are not alone in it, and the one who is with you has never once lost his grip on anyone he loves. The second promise, I will never leave you nor forsake you. If the first promise is God declaring his presence, the second is God guaranteeing its permanence. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, the writer draws on words that God had spoken again and again across the centuries, to Jacob, to Joshua, to a whole succession of frightened leaders, and gathers them into one unbreakable assurance, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Now, one of the deepest fears the human heart can carry, deeper even than the fear of a specific hardship, is the fear of being abandoned in the middle of it. It is one thing to face something hard. It is another thing entirely to face it and look around and find that everyone who promised to stand with you has quietly slipped away. Many of you know that particular grief from experience. You have been left. Someone said they would stay and they did not stay. Someone promised for better or for worse and then disappeared the moment the worse arrived. And that wound goes deep because it teaches the heart a cruel lesson, that love is conditional, that presence is temporary, that when things get hard enough, you will ultimately be left to face the worst of it by yourself. Into that specific wound, God speaks a promise built with a force in the original language that our English translations can barely contain. In Greek, the sentence piles up multiple negatives, one on top of another, in a way that would be grammatically incorrect in English, but is emotionally overwhelming in the original. It is as if God is saying, I will never, no, not ever, no, never, no, not in any way, no, under no circumstances whatsoever, leave you or forsake you. He heaps up the denials because he knows how deep the fear runs. He knows that once you have been abandoned, a single quiet reassurance is not enough. So he stacks the promise as high as it will go, until there is no crack left for the fear to slip through. And notice what this promise is anchored to in Hebrews. The verse before it is about contentment, about being free from the love of money, about not being driven and tormented by the endless fear of not having enough. And the ground of that contentment is exactly this promise. You can be free from the gnawing anxiety of what if I run out? What if I lose it all? What if the future strips everything away? Because the one thing that can never be stripped away is the presence of God, and He has bound Himself never to leave. Everything else you own can be taken. Your health can fail. Your money can vanish. The people you love can go. But the God who said, I will never leave you, cannot be removed from your side by any power in heaven or earth, because He is not staying by your choice or your worthiness or your performance. He is staying by His own oath, sworn on His own unchanging character. And God has never once broken His word. So when you lie awake afraid of what is coming, and the old fear whispers that you will face it alone, that everyone leaves eventually, that when the worst comes, you will be abandoned in it, you can answer that whisper with the piled-up promise of God. He will never leave you. No, not ever. No, not in any way. No, under no circumstances. Whatever is coming, He will be in it with you, and He will still be there when it has passed, and He will never, ever be talked into leaving. The third promise, when you pass through the waters. There is a particular kind of fear that comes not from imagining a hardship, but from being certain of one, from knowing that something difficult is not a possibility, but an appointment already on the calendar. For that fear, God gives the third promise in Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1 and 2. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. Read that carefully, because there is something in it that changes everything about how we face what is coming. God does not say if you pass through the waters. He says when. He does not promise a life with no deep waters and no fire. He promises His presence in the waters and in the fire. This is one of the most important things to understand about the promises of God when you are afraid of the future. God very rarely promises to remove the hard thing. What He promises over and over is to be with you inside it and to not let it destroy you. The waters are real, but they will not overflow you. The fire is real, but it will not consume you. You may walk straight into the very thing you have been dreading, and you will come out the other side, singed perhaps, changed perhaps, but alive and still His, and never once alone in the flames. Consider the imagery God chooses. Water and fire, the two most terrifying and uncontrollable forces the ancient world knew. A flood could sweep away an entire village in a night. A fire could reduce a lifetime of labor to ash before morning. These are the forces you cannot bargain with, cannot reason with, cannot outrun. And these are precisely the forces God names, as if to say, even these, even the things you have no power over, even the disasters that come without warning and answer to no one, even those, I will be with you in them, and they will not have the final word over your life. And notice how the promise is grounded. Before God ever mentions the waters or the fire, He establishes who you are to Him. I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. This is the foundation on which the whole promise stands. You are not a stranger to God, facing the coming storm as an anonymous face in an indifferent crowd. You have been redeemed, bought back, paid for, reclaimed at enormous cost. You have been called by name. God does not know you as a number or a statistic or a category, but by the specific name that is yours, the name He knew before you were born. And you are His, a possession He treasures, a child He claims, someone He has decided to keep. It is because of these three things, redeemed, named, owned by love, that the waters cannot overflow you and the fire cannot consume you. You belong to someone who will not let the deep waters have you. Whatever is coming, you are going into it as one who is already spoken for, already redeemed, already His. And the God who paid to make you His own is not about to lose you in the flood. The fourth promise, my peace I give unto you. On the last night before His death, in a room heavy with grief and confusion and fear, Jesus made a promise to His terrified friends that has been steadying frightened hearts ever since. John chapter 14 verse 27, Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Think about the timing of these words, because the timing is everything. Jesus is not speaking these words on a calm afternoon with nothing on the horizon. He is speaking them hours before His arrest, hours before the torture and the trial and the cross. He knows exactly what is coming, knows it in agonizing detail, and it is genuinely terrible. And His disciples, though they do not yet fully understand, can feel the darkness gathering. The mood in that upper room is one of dread. Something is coming, and everyone in the room can sense it. And it is precisely into that atmosphere, not in spite of the coming darkness, but directly into the teeth of it, that Jesus says, Peace, my peace. I give it to you. Now notice the crucial distinction He draws, not as the world giveth. The peace the world offers is always circumstantial. It is the peace of a good bank balance, a clean scan, a resolved conflict, a calm week. It is peace that depends entirely on nothing going wrong, which means it is not really peace at all, but a temporary absence of trouble, always nervously scanning the horizon for the next threat. The world's peace evaporates the instant circumstances turn, because it was never anchored in anything but circumstances. But the peace Jesus gives is a different kind of thing altogether. It is not the absence of storm. It is a settledness that holds in the storm. It does not depend on your circumstances being calm. It comes from a source outside your circumstances entirely, from the presence and the promise of a God who remains steady no matter how violently the world around you shakes. This is why the peace of Christ can seem almost incomprehensible from the outside. People who have it are able to face frightening things, genuinely frightening things, diagnoses and losses and dangers, with a calm that makes no earthly sense, because the calm is not coming from their earthly situation. It is coming from Him, and He gives it as a gift, freely. Notice He does not say, earn my peace or achieve my peace through sufficient effort. He says, I give it to you. It is a bequest, like something handed down in a will. Peace I leave with you. The deliberate gift of a dying man to the people he loves, meant to steady them long after he is gone. So when your heart is troubled about what is coming, hear the voice of Jesus in that upper room, speaking to you as directly as He spoke to them. Let not your heart be troubled. It is, in a sense, both a command and a permission. Permission to lay down the trouble you have been carrying, because it has been placed into far stronger hands than yours. His peace is not something you have to generate. It is something you receive. Open your hands and take it. The fifth promise, I know the thoughts I think toward you. Much of the fear of the future comes down to one terrible suspicion, that no one is actually in charge, or that if someone is, they do not have your good in mind, that the future is random or hostile or indifferent, a series of things that will simply happen to you, with no purpose and no plan and no one steering. Against that specific suspicion, God speaks the fifth promise in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Once again, the setting transforms the meaning. These words were written to people in exile, the very exile the first promise was warning about. By the time Jeremiah writes this, the catastrophe has already happened. The city is broken. The people are captives in Babylon, far from home, wondering if God has forgotten them entirely, wondering if their future holds anything but slavery and sorrow. And it is to those people, not to comfortable people with bright prospects, but to displaced and defeated captives, that God says, I know the thoughts I think toward you. That word thoughts can also be translated plans. God is saying, I have plans for you, and I want you to know what kind of plans they are. Because that is the real question, isn't it? Not just is anyone in charge, but if someone is in charge, are they for me or against me? And God answers that question directly and unmistakably. Thoughts of peace and not of evil. The plans God holds toward you are plans for your welfare, your wholeness, your ultimate good, not plans to harm you, not plans to crush you, not the schemes of a hostile universe. To give you an expected end, a future, and a hope. There is an end being aimed at, a destination, and it is good. Your life is not a series of random events tumbling toward nothing. It is a story being told by an author who loves you and who has already written a good ending. Now, we must be honest about what this promise does and does not say, because it has often been misused. It does not promise that every circumstance in your life will be easy or pleasant. Remember, it was spoken to people who were going to remain in exile for 70 years. Most of the original hearers would die in Babylon before the promise of return was fulfilled. So this is not a promise that nothing hard will happen. It is a promise about the ultimate trajectory and intention of God toward you. Through the hard things and the long waiting and even the parts of the story you will not live to see finished, God's disposition toward you never once turns hostile. His thoughts toward you are thoughts of peace. Even when the immediate chapter is painful, the author is good, and the ending he is writing toward is good, and you can face the coming pages without terror because you know the heart of the one holding the pen. So when the future feels random or hostile, when you suspect that the universe is indifferent to your small and frightened life, take hold of this promise. God knows the thoughts he thinks toward you. He has plans. Those plans are for peace and not for harm, and there is an expected end, a good and hoped-for destination, toward which even your hardest chapters are quietly, faithfully moving. The sixth promise: cast all your care upon him. Fear is heavy. That is not a metaphor, it is nearly a physical fact. Anxiety sits on the chest, tightens the shoulders, knots the stomach, wears down the body over time in measurable ways. We were not built to carry the future. And God, who knows exactly how we were built, gives us the sixth promise as an invitation to put the weight down. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. The word care here means anxiety, the dividing, distracting, pulling apart of the mind that happens when you are worried. And the word casting is active and deliberate, is not a passive drifting away of worry. It is a decisive act of throwing something off yourself and onto someone else. Peter is describing something you actually do, a transfer of weight. You take the thing you have been carrying, the crushing bundle of what-ifs and what-thens, and you hurl it off your own back and onto the back of God, who is infinitely able to carry what would break you. But here is the part that transforms the whole command, the part without which it would just be one more impossible spiritual instruction. Peter tells you why you can do this, for he careth for you. You can cast your anxiety onto God because God cares about you. This is not a distant deity who tolerates your existence and would prefer not to be bothered with your small worries. This is a Father whose care for you is so real, so personal, so attentive, that he wants you to bring him the weight. He's not annoyed by your anxiety. He is not tapping his foot waiting for you to get your act together and stop bothering him with your fears. He cares. The word means it matters to him. You matter to him, and what happens to you matters to him, and the fact that you are lying awake afraid matters to him. He is leaning in, not pulling away. Think about what it means to be invited to do this. Imagine carrying something impossibly heavy up a long hill, exhausted, certain you cannot make it, and someone far stronger than you walks up beside you and says, "Give it to me, I've got it, you don't have to carry that." The relief of it, the sudden lightness, that is what this promise offers, except the one offering to carry your burden is not merely stronger than you. He is the God who holds the universe together and never grows tired, and never sets it down. There is no burden of yours that would strain him. There is no fear so large that it would overwhelm his capacity. He is inviting you to throw the whole crushing weight of your future onto shoulders that will never buckle. So do it, not once, but as a practice, as often as the weight returns. Every time you feel the future settling back onto your chest, every time the what-ifs start their grinding again, cast it. Throw it off yourself and onto him. Say it plainly if you need to. This is too heavy for me, and you have told me to give it to you, so here it is. And then leave it there. The astonishing thing about this transaction is that God never once hands the burden back and says it was too much. He carries it. Because he cares for you, the seventh promise, be careful for nothing. Closely tied to the sixth is the seventh, one of the most beloved and practical promises in all of Scripture, given to us through Paul in a letter he wrote from prison. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7, be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. The Old English phrase, be careful for nothing, does not mean be careless. In the language of the time, careful meant full of care, full of anxiety. So the command is, do not be full of anxiety about anything. And once again, God does not simply issue the command and leave you to figure out how to obey it. He gives you the exact mechanism, the specific practice by which anxiety is displaced. In everything, not some things, not just the big things, but everything, by prayer, by supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. This is the divine prescription for a frightened heart, and it has three ingredients worth pausing on. First, prayer. Simply turning toward God and speaking to him, bringing the matter into his presence instead of letting it churn endlessly in the closed loop of your own mind. So much of anxiety is the mind running the same frightening scenario over and over with no exit. Prayer breaks the loop by introducing a listener, by taking the fear out of the sealed room of your own head and speaking it aloud to someone who can actually do something about it. Second, supplication, specific, honest asking. Not vague spiritual sighing, but naming the actual thing you need and asking God for it directly. Tell him what you are afraid of. Tell him what you want him to do. He is not fragile. He can handle your specific, desperate requests. And third, this is the one we most often skip, with thanksgiving. Paul says to bring your anxious requests to God wrapped in gratitude. This is not a denial of the hard thing. It is a deliberate act of remembering in the middle of the fear that God has been faithful before. Thanksgiving is the practice of looking back at every other frightening moment you were sure you would not survive. And here you are, still standing, still held. It anchors the frightened present to a remembered faithfulness, and it reminds your anxious heart that the God you are asking is a God with a track record. Gratitude and terror cannot fully occupy the same space. Where thanksgiving genuinely enters, fear begins, at least a little, to loosen its grip. And then comes the promise, the result of the practice. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds. Notice, it is a peace that passes understanding. That means you will not be able to explain it. It will not add up. Your circumstances may not have changed at all. The frightening thing may still be entirely unresolved, and yet a peace will settle over you that makes no logical sense given the situation. People will not understand it. You will not fully understand it yourself. That is precisely its signature. It surpasses understanding because it does not come from your understanding of the situation. It comes from God. And that word keep is a military term. It means to garrison, to stand guard like soldiers around a city gate. The peace of God will post itself as a sentry around your heart and your mind, guarding the very places where fear tries to break in. You do the turning toward, the prayer, the asking, the thanks. God does the guarding, and his peace stands watch over you through the night. The eighth promise, God hath not given us the spirit of fear. Sometimes fear does not feel like a passing emotion. It feels like an identity. It feels like who you are, a fearful person, an anxious person, someone constitutionally prone to dread, as though it were written into your very makeup and there is nothing to be done about it. Against that lie, God speaks the eighth promise through Paul to a young and frightened church leader named Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. The context matters deeply here. Paul is writing to Timothy, a younger man he loves like a son, who is facing intimidating opposition and appears to be shrinking back, tempted to let fear silence him. And Paul reminds him of something fundamental about the very spirit that lives within every believer. The disposition of fear, the cowering, cringing, gripped by dread spirit that is not from God. God did not hand you that. It is not the spirit he placed within you. So whatever that fearful spirit is, wherever it is whispering from, you can be certain of one thing. It is not the voice of God, and it is not the identity God has assigned to you. And then Paul names what God has given, and it is a magnificent trio that stands directly opposed to fear. First, power, not the frantic, brittle strength of a person white-knuckling their way through life, but a genuine God-given capacity to face what comes. Where fear says you cannot handle this, the spirit of power answers you have been given strength for exactly this. Second, love, because fear, at its core, is deeply self-focused. It curls the soul inward around its own survival. Love does the opposite. It turns the heart outward, and Scripture tells us plainly that perfect love casts out fear. The more your heart is filled with love, the love of God for you, and your love flowing back toward Him and toward others, the less room there is for fear to occupy. Love, quite literally, crowds fear out. And third, a sound mind. Some translations render it self-discipline or self-control, but the idea is a mind that is calm, ordered, clear thinking, no longer spinning in the chaos of anxious speculation. Fear scatters the mind into 1,000 catastrophic scenarios. The Spirit of God gathers the mind back into soundness, clarity, and calm. So the next time fear tries to tell you that this is simply who you are, that you are at your core an anxious and fearful person and always will be, you can answer it with the certainty of this promise. That is not who you are. That spirit of fear was not given to you by God, and it does not define you. What God has placed within you is power and love and a sound mind. That is your true inheritance. That is the spirit that actually lives in you, and you are free to stop identifying with the fear and start identifying with what God has actually given you. The ninth promise, the Lord is my shepherd. Perhaps no words in all of human literature have comforted more frightened people through more dark valleys than the 23rd Psalm. It has been whispered in hospital rooms and prison cells, recited at gravesides and in bomb shelters, clung to by soldiers and widows and dying saints across 3,000 years. And at its heart is the 9th promise from Psalm 23, verses 1 and 4. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. David, who wrote this psalm, had been a shepherd himself as a boy. He knew from personal experience what sheep are like and what a shepherd does. And so when he reaches for an image to describe how God relates to him, he reaches for the most intimate and practical relationship he knows, the shepherd and the sheep. Sheep are not capable animals. They cannot defend themselves. They have no fangs, no claws, no speed, no cunning. They are almost entirely dependent on the shepherd for everything, for finding food, for finding water, for protection from predators, for rescue when they wander, for care when they are injured. And David looks at his own frightened, dependent, vulnerable life and says, "That is me, and the Lord is my shepherd." Now walk with David into the valley, because this is where the promise touches your fear directly. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, notice once more that God does not promise a path that avoids the valley. The valley is on the route. Sometimes the only way to greener pasture is straight through the dark ravine where predators lurk and the shadows are long and death itself casts its shade across the path. David does not pretend the valley does not exist, but watch what he says in the middle of it. I will fear no evil. Why? Not because the valley isn't dangerous, not because there is nothing there to fear, for thou art with me. There it is again. The same foundation beneath every promise in this entire teaching, the presence of God. David can walk through the darkest valley without terror, not because the valley is safe, but because the shepherd is there, walking beside him, and the shepherd is more than a match for anything the valley holds. And notice one small, precious grammatical shift that has comforted careful readers for centuries. Through the first 3 verses of the psalm, David speaks about God. He makes me lie down, he leads me, he restores my soul. God is spoken of in the 3rd person at a slight distance, but the moment David enters the valley, the very moment the darkness closes in, the language changes. Suddenly, it is no longer he, but thou. For thou art with me. In the valley, God is no longer spoken about from a distance. He is spoken to face, right there. The darkness, far from driving God away, brings him closer than ever. It is often precisely in the valley, precisely in the thing you were most afraid of, that the presence of God becomes most real, most immediate, most personally with you. The rod and the staff, the shepherd's tools for driving off predators and for gently guiding wandering sheep back to the path, become a comfort, because they are evidence that the shepherd is armed, attentive, and near. So when you walk into your own valley, and you may be walking into it right now, or seeing it approach, remember the shepherd. You are not a capable animal facing the valley on your own strength. You are a beloved and cared for sheep, and the one walking beside you has never lost a single one of his flock in the dark. You shall not want, and you need not fear, for he is with you all the way through until the valley opens out again into green pasture on the other side. The 10th promise, come unto me, all ye that labor. We have reached the 10th promise, and it is an invitation so tender that it has drawn exhausted people to Christ for 2,000 years. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Listen to who is invited, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. That is not a special category of especially holy people. That is you, if you are tired. That is you, if the weight of what you are carrying has worn you down. That is you, if you are laboring under a load that is too heavy. The load of fear, the load of responsibility, the load of trying to hold your whole life together by sheer effort and will. Jesus does not say, "Come to me," when you have rested up and pulled yourself together. He says the exact opposite. Come as the weary. Come as the heavy laden. Come in the condition you are actually in right now, exhausted and afraid, and he will give you rest. And notice what he offers, because it is subtle and beautiful. He does not simply say, "Put down every burden and carry nothing." He says, "Take my yoke upon you." A yoke is a wooden frame that joins two animals together so they can pull a load as a team, sharing the weight. Jesus is not offering you a life with no work and no load at all. He's offering to be yoked to you, to step into the frame beside you and pull the load with you, so that what was crushing you when you pulled it alone becomes bearable when he pulls it with you. That is why he can say his yoke is easy and his burden is light, not because the load itself is small, but because you are no longer pulling it by yourself. The strongest one who has ever lived has stepped into the yoke beside you and taken the greater share of the weight onto his own shoulders. And then there is the reason he gives for why we can trust him with this, a reason that tells us something about the very heart of God. "Learn of me," he says, "for I am meek and lowly in heart." Of all the things Jesus could have said about himself, that he is powerful, that he is wise, that he is the maker of all things, the one quality he names here, the one he points to as the reason the weary can safely come to him, is his gentleness. He is meek. He is lowly in heart. He is not harsh with the exhausted. He is not impatient with the fearful. He does not despise the weak or roll his eyes at the ones who keep coming back with the same old burden. His heart, at its very core, is gentle towards struggling people. And that is exactly why you can bring him the whole crushing weight of your fear of the future without a moment's hesitation. He is gentle. He will not break you. He will give you rest. So come. That is the whole of it. Not clean yourself up and then come. Not conquer your fear and then come. Just come as you are, laboring and heavy laden, and let him give you the rest your soul has been aching for. Take his yoke. Let him pull the load with you, and find at last the rest that has been waiting for you all along. The 11th promise. In the world ye shall have tribulation. There is a strange comfort in being told the truth, even when the truth is hard. The 11th promise is one of the most honest things Jesus ever said, and precisely because of its honesty, it is one of the most steadying. John chapter 16, verse 33. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. Notice that Jesus does not sell you a fantasy. He does not promise that if you follow him closely enough, your life will be free of trouble. In fact, he promises the opposite. In the world ye shall have tribulation. You will have trouble. It is coming. He says it plainly, without flinching, because false comfort is no comfort at all when the storm actually arrives. A promise that only works if nothing ever goes wrong is a promise that will shatter the moment you need it most. So Jesus refuses to build your peace on the false foundation of a trouble-free life. He builds it somewhere far more solid. Where does he build it? On two things he places on either side of that hard truth, like two strong walls holding it up. On the one side, in me ye might have peace. The peace is available in him, not in your circumstances, which will include tribulation, but in him who remains steady through every circumstance. And on the other side, the great triumphant declaration, "Be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." Here is the deepest ground of courage in the face of what is coming. The world, with all its tribulation, all its threats, all its frightening uncertainties, that whole system of trouble has already been overcome. Jesus has already defeated it. He is not hoping to win. He has won. The outcome of the great war is already settled. What remains are skirmishes, real ones, painful ones, ones that will cost you something. But skirmishes in a war whose final result is no longer in doubt. This changes entirely how you face the coming trouble. You are not fighting for victory, anxiously wondering if you will win. You are living from a victory that has already been secured by someone infinitely stronger than you. The tribulation is real, but it is a defeated enemy, thrashing in its final days, unable to change the ending. The one who has overcome the world lives in you and walks with you into every hard thing. So when Jesus says, "Be of good cheer," in the same breath as ye shall have tribulation, he is not being naive or dismissive. He is telling you the fullest truth. Yes, trouble is coming, and yes, at the very same time, you can take heart, because the one who has already conquered everything you fear is with you, and he does not lose. The 12th promise. He which hath begun a good work in you. Some fears are not about external events at all. Some of the deepest fears are about ourselves. The fear that we are too weak, too inconsistent, too prone to failure to ever become who we are supposed to be. The fear that we will start well and finish poorly, that we will let everyone down, that whatever good has begun in us will ultimately collapse under the weight of our own flaws. For that inward fear, God gives the 12th promise, again through Paul in his letter from prison. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. Read that slowly and let the pressure lift off your shoulders, because this promise relocates the responsibility for your spiritual completion from your shoulders to God's. Notice who began the good work in you, not you. He which hath begun a good work. God started it. The very fact that you care about him at all, the very fact that something in you is drawn toward the good, toward the light, toward him, that was not your own achievement. It was God beginning a work in you. And notice who finishes it. Again, not you. He will perform it. He will carry it through to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. The one who started the work is the one who guarantees its completion. You are not the author of your own transformation, straining anxiously to keep the whole project from falling apart. You are the work being done in the hands of a craftsman who does not abandon his projects half-finished. This is one of the most liberating truths in all of Scripture for the anxious soul. Because so much of our fear about ourselves comes from the crushing, unspoken assumption that it is all up to us, that if we are going to become good, become whole, become who we are meant to be, we have to somehow accomplish it through sheer effort. And we know deep down that we are not up to it. We know our own inconsistency. We know how many times we have started well and drifted. And so we live with a low, grinding fear that we will ultimately fail at the most important thing of all. But this promise says, it was never all up to you. The one who began the good work in you is faithful, and he finishes what he starts. He is not going to give up on you partway through. He is not going to look at your failures and inconsistencies and decide the project is not worth completing. He began it deliberately, and he will complete it faithfully all the way to the end. So when you are afraid that you are not enough, not strong enough, not consistent enough, not good enough to finish well, rest in this. The good work in you is God's work, and God finishes what he begins. He is confident even when you are not. He is not anxious about your completion, even on the days when you are terrified of your own weakness. He began it. He will perform it. and he will not stop until the day it is finished and complete. The 13th promise, all things work together for good. We come now to one of the most quoted and, at times, most misunderstood promises in all of Scripture, a promise that, rightly understood, is a fortress against the fear of what is coming. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Let us be careful and precise with this one, because its comfort depends entirely on understanding what it actually says. It does not say that all things are good. That would be false and cruel, and you would be right to reject it. Terrible things happen. Illness is not good. Betrayal is not good. The death of someone you love is not good. God never asks you to pretend that evil is somehow secretly fine. What the promise says is something far more profound and far more durable, that all things work together for good. The individual ingredients may be bitter, some of them terribly bitter, but God is working them together, combining them, weaving them into a larger whole in which the final result is good, even when the individual threads are dark. Think of it like a master weaver working at a loom. If you looked only at the back of the tapestry while it was being made, you would see a chaos of knots and loose threads and seemingly random dark colors, with no discernible pattern. It would look like a mess, like a mistake. But that is because you are seeing it from the wrong side. On the other side, the side the weaver sees, every one of those threads, including the dark ones, especially the dark ones, is being worked into a picture of stunning beauty that could not exist without them. The dark threads are not mistakes. They are essential to the design. Remove them and the picture collapses. And that is God's promise about your life, that he is weaving all of it, the bright threads and the dark ones, the joys and the losses, the answered prayers and the crushing disappointments, into a whole that is good. A picture you cannot yet see from where you sit, but that he can see and that he is faithfully, skillfully bringing into being. And notice the boundary the promise draws. To them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. This is not a blanket promise that everything turns out fine for everyone in every situation, regardless of anything. It is a covenant promise given specifically to those who belong to God, who love him, who have been called into his purpose. If that is you, if you have turned your life toward God, however falteringly, then this promise is yours to stand on. Not one thing that happens to you is wasted. Not one tear, not one loss, not one frightening season, not one thing you dread that is coming. None of it will be thrown away. God will take even that, especially that, and work it together with everything else into a good you cannot yet imagine. So when you look at what is coming and it frightens you, when you cannot see how anything good could possibly come out of it, remember, you are looking at the back of the tapestry. You are seeing the knots and the dark threads and the apparent chaos. But there is a weaver, and he is working, and he has promised that when the work is done, and you finally see it from the right side, you will find that not one thread was wasted, and the whole of it, even the parts you feared most, was being woven into good. The 14th promise, weeping may endure for a night. Some seasons of fear and sorrow feel as though they will never end. That is one of the cruelest tricks that grief and dread play on the human heart. They convince you that the darkness is permanent, that this night has no morning, that you will feel this way forever. Against that particular lie, God gives the 14th promise in Psalm 30 verse 5. For his anger endureth but a moment, in his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. There is a rhythm built into this promise that the frightened heart desperately needs to hear. The rhythm of night and morning. Weeping may endure for a night. The night is real. The psalmist does not deny the night, does not pretend there is no weeping, does not rush past the sorrow with false cheer. The night of weeping is acknowledged fully. It is a real night, and it may be a long one, and it may be very dark. But dates and everything hangs on this small, mighty word. But joy cometh in the morning. The night, however long, however dark, is not the end of the story. It has a boundary. There is a morning appointed. The dawn is coming. Consider how deeply this is woven into the very fabric of the world God made. From the beginning, God structured creation itself around this rhythm. Evening and morning, day after day. Every single night that has ever fallen on this earth, no matter how dark, no matter how long, has ended in a morning. There has never once been a night that lasted forever. Not one. The sun has risen on every single day of human history, over every battlefield and every deathbed and every sleepless, terror-filled darkness. The morning has always come, and God built that pattern into the world, in part, as a daily repeating sermon to frightened hearts. The night ends, the morning comes. This is how I have made things. Weeping is for the night. But the night is not forever, and joy is coming with the dawn. This does not mean your particular night will end tomorrow morning on your preferred schedule. The morning of this promise is God's morning, in God's timing, and sometimes the night of the soul is long. But the promise stands unshaken. It will end. The season of weeping is not your permanent address. It is a night you are passing through, and on the other side of it, as surely as the sun rises, there is joy. So if you are in the night right now, if you are lying awake in the dark, afraid, weeping, certain the morning will never come, hold on to this. The one who made the morning has never once failed to bring it. Your night has a boundary you cannot yet see, and joy is already on its way to you, traveling toward you through the darkness, certain to arrive with the dawn. The 15th promise. Underneath are the everlasting arms. There is a fear that comes at the very bottom, the fear you feel when you have fallen as far as you can fall, when every support has given way, when you are certain there is nothing left beneath you but the abyss. For that fear, that bottom of everything fear, God gives the 15th promise in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 27. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Underneath. That is the word to hold on to. When you fall, and sometimes in life you do fall all the way down, past every handhold, past every ledge you thought would catch you, there is a question that terrifies the human soul. What is at the bottom? Is there anything down there but hard ground and ruin? Is there anything beneath the very bottom of my strength, my hope, my capacity to endure? And this promise answers that question with words of unspeakable comfort. Underneath are the everlasting arms. No matter how far you fall, you will not fall past the arms of God. He is underneath. He is at the bottom of the bottom. When you have descended past every other support, when everything you were leaning on has given way, there is still something beneath you. And it is not the ground, and it is not the abyss. It is the everlasting arms of God, and they do not break, and they do not tire, and they have never once let a falling child hit the ground. Notice the word everlasting. These are not arms that will hold you for a while and then grow weak. They are not arms that might tire if your season of falling goes on too long. They are everlasting arms, arms that were holding before the world began and will still be holding when the world has passed away. There is no scenario in which they give out. There is no length of suffering that would exhaust them. There is no weight of grief or fear that would cause them to buckle and drop you. They are the arms of the eternal God, and they are at this very moment underneath you, underneath your fear, underneath your exhaustion, underneath the very worst of what you are facing, holding you up when you cannot hold yourself. And notice the first half of the verse too. The eternal God is thy refuge. A refuge is a place you run to for safety when danger comes. A fortress, a shelter, a hiding place. God is not merely a distant observer of your danger. He is the place you can run into and be safe. So this promise gives you both things at once: a refuge to run into when the danger comes, and everlasting arms underneath you when you fall. Above you, a shelter. Beneath you, arms that cannot fail. Whatever is coming and however far it may cause you to fall, you are surrounded and undergirded by a God who has made himself both your fortress and your floor. You will not fall past him. You cannot. Underneath, always, eternally, unbreakably underneath, are the everlasting arms. The 16th promise: I will instruct thee and teach thee. A great deal of the fear of what is coming is really the fear of not knowing what to do. The future feels like a locked room full of decisions you are not equipped to make, paths you cannot see clearly, choices where a wrong turn could be disastrous. You lie awake not only afraid of what will happen, but afraid that you will handle it wrong, that you will choose badly, that you will not have the wisdom the moment requires. For that fear, God gives the 16th promise in Psalm 32, verse 8. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Hear what God commits to here. He does not simply drop you into the frightening unknown of the future and leave you to figure it out by yourself. He promises to instruct you, to teach you, to guide you in the very way you should go. This is the promise of a God who does not abandon his children at the crossroads. When you come to the moment of decision, the choice you have been dreading, the fork in the road where you cannot see which path is right, you do not face it with only your own limited wisdom. You face it with the promise that God himself will instruct you and teach you and guide you in the way you should go. He knows the path. He can see around the corners you cannot see around, and he has committed himself to guiding you along it. Look at that last tender phrase: I will guide thee with mine eye. This is the picture of an intimacy so close that direction can be given with nothing more than a glance. Think of two people who know each other so well, a parent and a beloved child, two old friends, that across a crowded room, a single look communicates everything. A slight movement of the eyes, and the other one understands. That is the closeness God is describing between himself and you. He does not have to shout directions from a distance. He is close enough to guide you with his eye, which means he is watching you that attentively, that continuously, that lovingly. His eye is on you. He is not distracted, not looking elsewhere, not too busy with the vast affairs of the universe to attend to your small and frightened steps. His gaze is fixed on you, ready to guide you at the very moment you need direction, with the intimate ease of a look between two who love each other deeply. So when you are afraid that you will not know what to do, that the future will demand a wisdom you do not possess, that you will face choices too big and consequences too permanent for someone as uncertain as you, take hold of this promise. You do not have to have all the wisdom yourself. You only have to stay close enough to catch his eye. He has promised to instruct you, to teach you, to guide you in the way you should go. Keep your eyes on him, and he will make sure you can see in each moment the next step you need to take. You will not be left to navigate the darkness alone. The one who made the path is walking it with you, and he has promised to show you the way. The 17th promise: they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Waiting is one of the hardest things God ever asks of a frightened person. When you are afraid of what is coming, every instinct screams at you to do something, to act, to solve it, to force the resolution, and often the thing God asks instead is that you wait. And waiting drains you. It wears down the soul in a way that action rarely does, because in the waiting you feel your own helplessness most acutely. For the exhaustion of waiting, God gives the 17th promise in Isaiah chapter 40, verses 30 and 31. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Notice first the honest acknowledgement of human limitation. Even the youths, even the strongest, most vigorous people, those at the very peak of their natural strength, even they faint and grow weary and utterly fall. This is God being realistic about the limits of human strength. There is a point at which your own resources simply run out, no matter how young or strong or capable you are. Everyone reaches the end of their own strength eventually. It is only a matter of when. And if the promise stopped there, it would be a bleak observation. But it does not stop there. It pivots on one of the most beautiful contrasts in Scripture. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. The word wait here does not mean passive, idle sitting around. It carries the sense of hopeful expectation, of binding yourself to God, of looking to Him with trust while you wait for Him to act. And to those who wait on Him in that way, God makes a stunning promise. They shall renew their strength. The word suggests an exchange, trading in your own exhausted, depleted strength for His inexhaustible strength. It is not that you find a hidden reserve of your own willpower you did not know you had. It is that you receive a strength that is not yours at all, God's own strength poured into you, replacing what you have spent. This is why waiting on the Lord is not weakness or passivity. It is the very means by which the frightened and exhausted soul is refilled from a source that never runs dry. And look at the threefold picture of what that renewed strength looks like, because it descends in a beautiful and deliberate order. First, they shall mount up with wings as eagles, soaring, rising above the storm, lifted high on the wind. That is the mountaintop experience, the moment of exhilaration. But we do not live on the mountaintop. So next, they shall run and not be weary. The strength for the active seasons, the demanding stretches where much is required and you must keep moving. And finally, most tenderly of all, they shall walk and not faint. This is the strength for the ordinary day. The plain, unglamorous one foot in front of the other walking that most of life actually consists of. And notice, the promise saves the humblest image for last, as if to say that the greatest miracle is not the soaring, but the plodding, the strength to simply keep walking through an ordinary, difficult, frightening season without collapsing. If all you can do today is put one foot in front of the other, that is not failure. That is the promise being fulfilled. You are walking and not fainting, and you are doing it on strength that God is renewing in you as you wait on Him. The 18th promise, God is our refuge and strength. When the very ground beneath your life seems to be shaking, when the things you thought were solid and permanent begin to give way, when the world itself feels unstable and the future feels like it could collapse at any moment, you need a promise built for earthquakes. God gives it in Psalm 46, verses 1 through 3. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. Look at the sheer scale of the catastrophe the psalmist imagines here, because it is deliberately extreme. The earth being removed, the mountains, the very symbols of permanence and stability, the things that have stood unchanged for all of human memory, being carried into the sea, the waters roaring. This is the language of total upheaval, the collapse of everything that seemed most solid and most permanent. The psalmist is imagining the worst-case scenario, the complete undoing of the stable world. And what is his conclusion in the face of all that? Therefore will not we fear, not therefore we will be terrified, not therefore all hope is lost. But therefore will not we fear, because even if the mountains themselves are shaking, God is not shaking. Even if everything that seemed permanent gives way, God remains unmoved, our refuge and our strength. And that phrase in the middle deserves to be lingered over. a very present help in trouble. Not a distant help. Not a help that has to be summoned from far away and might arrive too late. A very present help, a help that is already here, already on the scene, already at hand the moment the trouble begins. God is not a resource you have to travel to reach in your crisis. He is present in the crisis, right in the middle of the trouble, closer than the trouble itself. When the earth shakes, he is already there. When the waters roar, he is already present. You do not have to wonder whether help will come in time. The help is a very present help. It is already with you before you even call. This is the promise for the seasons when everything feels like it is falling apart, when the stable things prove unstable, when the mountains you were leaning on are carried into the sea, when the future feels like it could collapse into chaos at any moment. In those seasons, the promise does not tell you the mountains will not shake. Sometimes they do shake. Sometimes the solid things really do give way. What the promise tells you is that there is one who does not shake, one refuge, one strength, one very present help who remains steady and unmoved while everything else is in upheaval. And you can run to him and be safe. So when your world is shaking, do not fix your eyes on the trembling mountains. Fix them on the God who does not tremble. He is your refuge. He is your strength. He is a very present help, already here, right in the middle of the trouble with you. Therefore, even now, even in this, you need not fear. The 19th promise, I am the Lord that healeth thee. For many of the fears that keep us awake, the thing we dread is bound up with the body, our own health, or the health of someone we love. The fear of the diagnosis, the fear of the decline, the fear of a body that is failing or a loved one slipping away. For that deep and primal fear, God speaks the 19th promise, first given to Israel in Exodus chapter 15, verse 26. I am the Lord that healeth thee. This is one of the great names of God, revealed early in the story of his people, Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals, and it tells us something essential about his character and his heart toward broken and hurting bodies. God is not indifferent to your physical suffering. He is not a distant deity who cares only about souls and ignores the aching, failing, frightened body that carries you through this world. He revealed himself deliberately as the Lord that heals, as one whose very nature includes the restoration of what is broken, the mending of what is damaged, the making whole of what has come apart. Healing is not foreign to his character. It flows out of who he is. Now we must hold this promise with both faith and wisdom, because the question of healing is tender and sometimes painful. God is the Lord who heals, and he heals in more than one way. Sometimes he heals directly and miraculously in ways that astonish the doctors and defy every expectation. Sometimes he heals through the ordinary means of medicine and treatment and skilled hands, which are themselves gifts from his hand. And sometimes, and this is the hardest truth held with great tenderness, the fullest and final healing does not come in this life at all, but in the next, where he wipes away every tear and where there is no more sickness and no more death and no more pain, and the healing is total and permanent and everlasting. In every case, he remains the Lord who heals. The promise of his healing nature is not cancelled by a body that is failing, because his healing is not confined to this life or this body. He is the Lord that heals, and one way or another, for everyone who belongs to him, complete healing is coming. So when you are afraid for your body or for the body of someone you love, bring that fear to the Lord that healeth thee. Ask him boldly for healing. He invites your asking, and he is able to do far more than you imagine. Trust his skill and his timing, even when you do not understand them. And hold on to the certainty that for those who are his, the final chapter is not sickness and not decline and not death, but complete and everlasting wholeness in his presence. He is the Lord that heals. That is his name, that is his nature. And he does not change. The 20th promise, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. When fear comes suddenly, when the threat appears out of nowhere and you need somewhere to run right now, this instant, you need a refuge you can reach in a heartbeat. God gives it in the 20th promise, in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. In the ancient world, a strong tower was the ultimate place of safety. When an enemy army swept across the land, the people of the countryside would run to the fortified tower or the walled city, and once inside, behind those massive stone walls, they were safe. The enemy could rage outside, but they could not reach you within. And this proverb takes that vivid image of security and applies it to something you carry with you always, something you can reach in an instant, no matter where you are. The name of the Lord. His name is a strong tower, and the righteous run into it and are safe. What does it mean that his name is a strong tower? In the Bible, a name is not just a label. It represents the whole character, the whole reality, the whole person. So the name of the Lord stands for everything he is, all his power, all his faithfulness, all his love, all his covenant commitment to his people. And that entire reality of who God is functions as a fortress you can run into. When fear strikes suddenly and you need safety immediately, you do not have to travel anywhere. You do not have to complete some lengthy ritual. You simply turn your heart toward God, call on his name, run into the reality of who he is, and you are inside the tower behind walls that no fear can breach. Notice how immediate this is. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. It is quick. It is available. It requires only that you run. In the moment of sudden terror, the phone call with bad news, the frightening symptom, the crisis that erupts without warning, there is a place to run that is always open, always near, always strong enough. The name of the Lord. You speak it. You call on him. You turn and run into the reality of his presence and his power and his faithfulness. And the promise is not that you might be safe or that you will feel a little better. The promise is that you are safe, inside the strong tower, behind unbreakable walls, sheltered by the very character of Almighty God. While whatever you feared rages harmlessly outside the walls, it cannot cross. So learn to run quickly. When fear comes, do not stand out in the open trying to fight it with your own strength. Run. Run to the name of the Lord, the strong tower that is always standing, always open, always near. Call on him and be safe. The 21st promise, be strong and of a good courage. When Moses died and the enormous task of leading an entire nation fell onto the shoulders of a man named Joshua, God knew that Joshua would be afraid. Stepping into a role that large, facing enemies that fierce, carrying responsibility that heavy, of course he would be afraid. And so God gave Joshua and gives you the 21st promise in Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Notice that courage here is framed as a command. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. At first that might seem strange. How can courage be commanded? You cannot simply order someone to stop feeling afraid. But look at what the command is anchored to, because the anchor is what makes the command possible. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. The courage is not commanded in a vacuum, as though God were demanding that Joshua manufacture bravery out of thin air. The courage is commanded on the basis of God's guaranteed presence. God is essentially saying, because I am with you, everywhere you go, into every situation without exception, you can be strong. You have grounds for courage. So take hold of the courage that my presence makes available to you. This is how biblical courage works, and it is entirely different from the world's version. The world says courage means believing in yourself, summoning strength from within, being confident in your own abilities. But that kind of courage is only as strong as you are, and you know in your honest moments how limited that is. Biblical courage is not confidence in yourself. It is confidence in the God who is with you. It does not depend on your being adequate to the task. It depends on His being adequate, and on His promise never to leave your side. Joshua was not asked to be brave because he was up to the challenge on his own. He was told to be brave because God would be with him everywhere he went. The courage flowed not from Joshua's strength, but from God's presence. And look at the beautiful scope of the promise, whithersoever thou goest, wherever you go. Not just to the pleasant places, not just to the safe assignments, but wherever you go, into the battle, into the unknown, into the very thing you are dreading. There is no place you can go where God's presence will not go with you. There is no frightening future you can walk into alone, because He has promised to be with you wherever you go. So when you face something that requires more courage than you feel you have, do not look inward and try to find bravery you do not possess. Look to the promise. The Lord your God is with you wherever you go, and on that basis, on that unshakable, guaranteed presence, you can be strong and of a good courage. You can face what is coming, not because you are strong enough, but because He is with you. And He is. The 22nd promise, casting down imaginations. So much of our fear of the future lives not in reality, but in imagination. The mind runs ahead into scenarios that have not happened and may never happen, constructing elaborate towers of dread out of pure speculation, and then treating those imagined catastrophes as though they were already real. For that particular tyranny of the anxious imagination, God gives a promise and a weapon through Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Look closely at the word imaginations. Paul understood something that anxious minds know all too well, that some of our most powerful enemies are not external at all, but are the strongholds we build inside our own heads. The imagined futures, the rehearsed disasters, the towering constructions of what if that come to dominate our thinking and terrorize our hearts. These are called strongholds for a reason. They are fortified. They feel unassailable. Once the anxious mind has built one of these towers of dread, it can seem impossible to dismantle. The frightening thought returns again and again, growing stronger with each repetition, until it feels less like a possibility and more like a settled fact. But look at what Paul says about these mental strongholds. They can be pulled down. They are not permanent. They are not unassailable after all. There is a weaponry, mighty through God, for casting down these imaginations, for demolishing the towers of dread the anxious mind constructs. And the specific weapon Paul names is this: bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. This is the practice of taking a frightening runaway thought the moment it appears, before it can build itself into a stronghold, and capturing it, arresting it, holding it up against the truth of Christ. You do not have to passively watch as the anxious thought runs wild and constructs its tower of terror. You can take that thought captive. You can seize it as it arises and ask, is this true? Does this line up with what God has promised? Or is this imagination exalting itself against the knowledge of God? This is one of the most practical promises for the frightened mind in all of Scripture, because it tells you that you are not helpless before your own anxious thoughts. The runaway imagination is not your master. When the mind begins to race ahead into the imagined catastrophe, you have been given the power, mighty through God, to catch that thought, to hold it up to the light of what God has actually said, and to bring it into captivity, to make it bow to the truth of Christ rather than letting it rule over you. The imagined disaster loses its power the moment you drag it out of the shadows of speculation and into the light of God's promises. Cast it down. Take it captive. Do not let the towers of what-if stand unchallenged in your mind, because you have been given in Christ the power to pull them down. The 23rd promise. He careth for the sparrows. Sometimes the fear underneath all our other fears is the quiet, terrible suspicion that we do not matter, that we are too small, too insignificant, too easily overlooked for God to really concern himself with the details of our particular life. Against that suspicion, Jesus offers the 23rd promise in Matthew chapter 10, verses 29 through 31. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father, but the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. Look at how Jesus builds this argument, because it moves from the smallest thing to the most tender detail, and it is designed to dismantle the fear of insignificance completely. He begins with the sparrow, one of the most common, least valuable creatures in the ancient economy, sold 2 for a farthing, the smallest coin there was. A sparrow was worth almost nothing. It was the very picture of the overlooked and insignificant. And yet Jesus says, not one of these nearly worthless little birds falls to the ground without your Father knowing. The God who runs the universe, who upholds the galaxies, who sustains all things by the word of his power, that God notices when a single sparrow falls. Not one of them escapes his attention, not one falls unseen. And then Jesus makes the leap that is meant to reach right into your fear. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. This is an image of the most extreme, most intimate attention imaginable. Not just that God knows you in general terms, but that his knowledge of you extends to a detail so small you do not even know it yourself. The exact number of hairs on your head, a number that changes day by day, that you have never counted and never could. God has counted them. This is not the attention of a distant deity who knows you as one member of a vast species. This is the attention of a Father who knows you down to the smallest detail of your physical being, who attends to you with a care so complete and so particular that nothing about you escapes his notice. And so Jesus draws the conclusion, fear ye not therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. If God attends so carefully to a creature worth half a farthing, how much more does he attend to you, you whom he made in his own image, whom he loved enough to die for, whom he calls his own child? The fear that you are too small, too insignificant, too easily overlooked, simply cannot survive in the light of this promise. You are seen, you are known, you are numbered down to the hairs of your head, and you are of great value in the eyes of the God who notices every falling sparrow. So whatever is coming, you can be sure of this. It is not coming to someone God has forgotten or overlooked. It is coming to a beloved child whom the Father watches with the most complete and tender attention in the universe. You matter to him. You matter enormously. And a God who attends to you that closely is not about to lose track of you now. The 24th promise. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. There is a fear that comes from feeling that your life is unfinished, that there are loose ends you cannot tie up, problems you cannot solve, situations concerning you and the people you love that hang unresolved and beyond your control. For that fear of the unfinished and the unresolved, God gives the 24th promise in Psalm 138, verse 8. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. forsake not the works of thine own hands. Sit with that first phrase, the Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. The word perfect here means to complete, to finish, to bring to its intended fullness. And that which concerneth me means the matters of your life, the things that touch you, the situations you are tangled up in, the concerns that weigh on you. The promise is that God Himself will bring these things to completion. The things concerning you that feel hopelessly unfinished, the loose ends you cannot tie, the problems that seem to have no solution you can reach, God will perfect them. He will finish what you cannot finish. He will bring to completion what is beyond your power to complete. This is such a relief for the anxious heart, because so much of our fear comes from the desperate, exhausting sense that we have to resolve everything ourselves, that if we do not solve this problem, tie up this loose end, fix this broken situation, then it will simply remain broken forever. We lie awake, running through the unresolved matters of our lives, feeling the weight of all the things we cannot control and cannot fix. And into that exhausting sense of unfinished responsibility, God speaks, I will perfect that which concerns you. You are not the one who has to bring your life to its good completion. God is, and He is far more capable of it than you are, and He never runs out of time or strength or wisdom, and He does not leave things unfinished. And notice the ground of confidence the psalmist stands on. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. Forsake not the works of thine own hands. You are the work of God's own hands. He made you. And the psalmist reasons that God does not abandon what He Himself has made. An artist does not walk away from a masterpiece half finished. A builder does not abandon a house with the roof half on. And God, who made you and began His good work in you, does not forsake the works of His own hands. He finishes what He starts. His mercy endures forever. It does not run out partway through your story. It does not give up on you when the situation gets complicated. It does not abandon you with your concerns unresolved. He will perfect that which concerns you, so you can release the exhausting burden of feeling that everything depends on your ability to resolve it all. It does not. The Lord will perfect that which concerns you, and His mercy toward you endures forever. The 25th promise. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. We have spoken already of the peace of God, but there is a specific promise that tells us exactly how that perfect peace is accessed, what the frightened mind must do to enter into it. It is found in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Look first at the phrase perfect peace. In the original Hebrew, the words are literally shalom, shalom, peace, peace. The word doubled for emphasis and completeness. It is peace upon peace, peace to the fullest degree, the deepest and most complete peace there is. This is not a partial calm, not a temporary quieting of the nerves, but perfect, whole, complete peace, the kind the anxious heart longs for and rarely believes is actually possible. And God promises to keep His people in exactly that peace. Not to grant it once and then leave you to hold on to it yourself, but to keep you in it, to guard you, to preserve you, to maintain you in that state of perfect peace. But notice the condition, because it tells you precisely what to do when fear rises, whose mind is stayed on thee. The word stayed means fixed, leaning, anchored, resting firmly upon. The perfect peace comes to the one whose mind is stayed on God, fixed on Him, anchored to Him, leaning its whole weight on Him rather than on the frightening circumstances. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight throughout all these promises. Peace is not primarily a matter of your circumstances changing. It is a matter of where your mind is fixed. The anxious mind is stayed on the problem. It circles the fear endlessly, fixes itself on the threat, rehearses the catastrophe again and again, and the more it stares at the frightening thing, the more the fear grows. The peaceful mind is stayed on God. It fixes itself on who He is, on what He has promised, on His faithfulness and His power and His nearness, and the more it beholds Him, the more the peace grows. This is enormously practical. It means that when fear rises, the first and most important battle is the battle for the focus of your mind. What are you staring at? What is your mind fixed on? If it is fixed on the frightening future, on the imagined catastrophe, on the problem you cannot solve, the fear will feed and grow. But if you deliberately turn your mind, stay it, fix it, anchor it, on God, on His character, on His promises, on His presence with you, then into that God-fixed mind flows the perfect peace He has promised. And notice the final phrase that makes it all possible, because He trusteth in thee. The staying of the mind on God is an act of trust. It is choosing to believe that He is more real and more reliable than the fear, and to fix your attention on Him accordingly. So when you are afraid, do this. Turn your mind. Take it off the threat and stay it on the God who holds you, and He will keep you. He promises to keep you in perfect peace, peace upon peace, because you have chosen to trust Him. The 26th promise: I will not leave you comfortless. When we are afraid, one of the loneliest feelings is the sense that we have been left to face it without comfort, that we are orphans in the storm, with no one to hold us, no one to console us, no presence to steady us in the dark. Jesus, knowing His disciples were about to feel exactly this way, gave them the 26th promise in John chapter 14, verse 18, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. The word translated comfortless is, in the original Greek, the word for orphans. Jesus is promising, I will not leave you as orphans. Think about the depth of that image. An orphan is one who has been left alone in the world, without the protection and provision and presence of a parent, exposed and unguarded and on their own. And that is precisely how the disciples were about to feel as Jesus went to the cross, abandoned, exposed, left alone in a hostile world. And it is how you may feel right now in your own fear, orphaned, unprotected, facing the coming storm without anyone to shelter you. Into that exact feeling Jesus speaks, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. And how does He come? This promise is spoken in the same conversation in which Jesus promises the coming of the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, the one who would come to dwell not merely alongside the disciples but within them. Jesus was going away in His physical body, yes, but He was not abandoning them. He was coming to them in an even more intimate way, by His Spirit, who would live inside every believer and be with them always, closer than a friend beside them, closer even than their own breath. So the promise is not merely that Jesus will visit from time to time. It is that He has come to dwell within you by His Spirit, so that you are never, in any moment, actually alone. The Comforter is with you. He is in you. When you feel most orphaned, most abandoned, most alone in your fear, the truth is that the very presence of God is dwelling within you, and you are not an orphan at all, but a beloved child in whom the Spirit of God has made His home. So when the loneliness of fear presses in, when it feels as though you are facing the coming darkness with no one beside you, no comfort, no presence, no help, return to this promise. You have not been left comfortless. You have not been abandoned as an orphan in the storm. The one who loves you has come to you, and He dwells within you by His Spirit, the Comforter who will never leave. You are not alone. You have never, for one single moment since He came to you, been alone, and you never will be again. The 27th promise, fear thou not, for I am with thee. Some promises are worth returning to from a second angle. because the human heart needs to hear the central truth again and again in different words until it finally sinks all the way down. So God gives, in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 13, a promise that takes the great assurance of his presence and adds to it a single, tender, physical image. For I, the Lord thy God, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, Fear not, I will help thee. I will hold thy right hand. Picture it. This is the gesture of a parent with a small child crossing a busy street or standing at the edge of something high and frightening. The child cannot navigate the danger alone. The child is too small, too weak, too easily overwhelmed. So the parent takes the child's hand, takes hold of it firmly, wraps their larger, stronger hand around the small, trembling one, and says, Don't be afraid. I've got you. I'm right here. I will help you. And in that moment, the child can face what would otherwise be terrifying, not because the child has become strong, but because the child is held by someone stronger. The danger has not changed, but the child is no longer facing it alone. The child is facing it hand in hand with someone who will not let go. That is the image God chooses for his relationship with you in your fear. I, the Lord thy God, will hold thy right hand. The God of all creation, the one whose hand flung the stars into space, stoops down to take your trembling hand in his. And notice, he holds your hand. It is not that he merely walks alongside you at a polite distance. He takes hold of you. There is contact, connection, a firm and deliberate grip. He wraps his strength around your weakness, and he speaks over you as he holds you. Fear not, I will help thee. The words and the grip go together, the reassurance spoken and the hand held at the same time, so that you both hear the promise and feel the presence behind it. This is the tenderness of God toward the frightened. He does not stand back and shout instructions at you from a safe distance while you face the danger alone. He comes close. He takes your hand. He holds it firmly in his own, the way you would hold the hand of a frightened child you love. And he does not let go, not when the danger rises, not when your grip weakens, not when you stumble. He holds on. His grip on you does not depend on the strength of your grip on him. He is holding you. So whatever is coming, you can walk toward it the way a child walks towards something frightening while holding a strong parent's hand, still aware of the danger perhaps, but no longer alone in it, no longer facing it on your own trembling strength, but held and helped and steadied by the hand of God that will not let you go. The 28th promise. Sufficient unto the day. Much of our fear is borrowed from tomorrow. We take the troubles that have not yet come, pile them on top of today's actual load, and then wonder why we feel crushed. Jesus, with piercing practical wisdom, addresses exactly this in the 28th promise, in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Understand first what Jesus is and is not saying. Take no thought for the morrow does not mean never plan, never prepare, never think ahead. Wisdom involves reasonable preparation, and Scripture praises the person who plans prudently. What Jesus is forbidding is not planning. It is anxious thought, the fearful, tormented mental rehearsal of tomorrow's troubles that accomplishes nothing except to steal today's peace. There is a world of difference between wisely preparing for tomorrow and anxiously suffering tomorrow in advance. The first is stewardship. The second is the theft of the present moment by an imagined future. And then Jesus gives the reason with a kind of gentle realism that is almost startling. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. In other words, each day has enough trouble of its own. Today has its own load, and today's load, whatever it is enough for today. You do not need to add tomorrow's imagined burdens to it. This is a profoundly liberating principle for the anxious heart. Because here is what anxiety does. It reaches into tomorrow and the day after and next month and next year, and it drags all of those potential troubles back into the present, and it stacks them all onto today until the weight is absolutely unbearable. But you were never meant to carry all of that at once. God gives grace one day at a time. The strength you will need for tomorrow's troubles will be given to you tomorrow, when tomorrow comes, not today. Today, you have only been given the grace for today's troubles, and today's grace is sufficient for today's load. Think of it like the manna in the wilderness. When God fed his people in the desert, he gave them bread from heaven each morning, but only enough for that day. If they tried to store it up and hoard it for the future, it spoiled. They had to trust him for each day's provision, one day at a time. And that is exactly how grace works. You cannot stockpile tomorrow's grace today. You cannot draw down next month's strength to spend it now. God gives what you need for each day, on that day faithfully without fail. So when you find yourself reaching into the future and dragging its imagined troubles back onto today's shoulders, gently stop. Set tomorrow's burden back down where it belongs, in tomorrow, where tomorrow's grace will be waiting for it. Live today. Carry only today's load on today's strength. And trust that when tomorrow comes, the God who has been faithful every single day of your life will be faithful then too, with grace sufficient for whatever that day holds. The 29th promise, the Lord shall fight for you. There are battles in life that are simply too big for us. Situations where we are outnumbered, outmatched, utterly incapable of winning by our own strength. When the people of Israel stood trapped between the Red Sea and the advancing army of Egypt, with no way forward and no way back and certain death bearing down on them, God gave them and gives you the 29th promise. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, "The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." Picture the scene, because it is one of the most hopeless situations imaginable. The Israelites are pinned against the sea. Behind them thunders the most powerful army in the world, chariots and horsemen closing in fast, coming to slaughter or re-enslave them. In front of them is deep water they cannot cross. There is no escape route, no strategy, no human possibility of survival. They are trapped and they are terrified, and by every rational calculation, they are about to be destroyed. And it is precisely there, in the most hopeless and helpless situation possible, that Moses turns to the panicking people and delivers God's word. "The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." Notice the astonishing division of labor in this promise. God will fight. You will hold your peace. In other words, this battle is not yours to win. It is too big for you, and God knows it is too big for you, and so he does not ask you to win it. He asks you to be still. Your job, in the face of the overwhelming and impossible situation, is not to fight harder, strategize better, or somehow find within yourself the strength to overcome what is clearly beyond you. Your job is to hold your peace, to be still, to stand firm, to stop your frantic striving, and to watch God do what only God can do. And then, as the story goes, God parts the sea. He makes a road where there was no road. He delivers his trapped and helpless people through the middle of the impossible, and he deals with the pursuing army himself. They did nothing but walk through the path he opened. He fought the battle. They held their peace. This is one of the hardest and most freeing promises for the frightened heart, because it goes against every anxious instinct. When we are afraid, everything in us wants to do something, to strive, to fight, to wrestle the situation into submission by our own effort. And sometimes God does call us to act, but there are battles, the biggest ones, the ones truly beyond us, where the call is not to fight, but to be still and to trust him to fight for us. There are situations so far beyond your power that the most faithful, most courageous thing you can do is to stop striving and let God be God. The Lord shall fight for you, you shall hold your peace. So when you find yourself trapped against an impossible situation, with the enemy closing in and no way out that you can see, remember, it is not all up to you. Some battles are the Lord's to fight. Stand still, hold your peace, and watch the God who parts seas make a way where there is no way. The 30th promise: nothing shall separate us from the love of God. We have reached the 30th promise, the halfway point of our journey through these 60 assurances. And it is fitting that at the center we place one of the greatest promises in all of Scripture, the towering crescendo of Paul's letter to the Romans. Romans chapter 8, verses 38 and 39. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Listen to the sweep of this promise, because Paul is deliberately trying to name absolutely everything you could possibly fear, in order to declare that none of it, not one thing on the entire list, not anything that could ever be added to it, can separate you from the love of God. He begins with the two greatest fears of all: neither death nor life. Death, the great terror, the final enemy, cannot separate you from God's love. And life, with all its unknown troubles and its long uncertainties, cannot separate you either. Then he ranges wider: angels, principalities, powers, every spiritual force, every unseen power in the universe. Then, most pointedly for our purposes, nor things present nor things to come. The things happening to you right now, and, hear this, the things that are coming. The very thing you are afraid of, the future that fills you with dread, the thing that is coming toward you, Paul specifically names it things to come. And he declares that it too is powerless to separate you from the love of God. This is the promise that stands guard over every other promise in this entire teaching. Because ultimately, underneath every specific fear, the deepest terror of the human heart is the fear of being cut off, cast out, separated from love, left utterly alone in the universe. And Paul, having thought through everything that could possibly threaten you, arrives at an unshakable conclusion: nothing can do it. Nothing that exists, nothing that could ever exist, nothing in all creation has the power to separate you from the love of God in Christ Jesus. The love that holds you is stronger than death itself. It is stronger than every power in heaven and earth. It is stronger than your past and stronger than your future. It is stronger than the thing you fear most. Whatever is coming, it cannot come between you and the love of God. That love has hold of you, and its grip cannot be broken by anything in existence. So let this be the anchor at the center of everything. Whatever you are afraid of, and we have named so many fears already, and will name more, hold it up against this promise. Can it separate you from the love of God? Death cannot, life cannot, powers cannot, things present cannot, and the things to come, the very things you are dreading, cannot. You are held by a love that nothing in all the universe can break, and a person held by that love, secure in that love, unable to be separated from that love by anything that exists, has, in the end, nothing left to ultimately fear. The worst that could ever happen still could not accomplish the one thing that would truly destroy you. It could not separate you from the love of God. And so you are safe, eternally, unbreakably safe, in the only way that finally matters. The 31st promise: be still and know that I am God. In the middle of that same psalm about the mountains shaking and the earth being removed, God speaks a command that has become a refuge for countless frightened souls. Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Be still. In a world that never stops moving, In a mind that never stops racing, in a life that never stops demanding, these two words come like a hand laid gently on a trembling shoulder. Be still. The Hebrew carries the sense of letting go, of ceasing your striving, of dropping your hands and relaxing your desperate grip. It is a command to stop the frantic activity, stop the anxious problem-solving, stop the exhausting effort to control what you cannot control, and simply be still before God. And notice that this stillness is commanded precisely in the context of upheaval. This is not a command for calm and easy days. It is spoken over the roar of the shaking mountains and the raging sea. In the very middle of the chaos, God says, "Be still." And stillness is joined to knowing. Be still and know that I am God. The stillness is not empty. It is not the mere absence of activity. It is a stillness for the purpose of knowing, for remembering, deep in your bones, a truth that the frantic mind forgets, that God is God. When you are anxious, when the mountains are shaking and the future is roaring, the thing you most forget is the simplest and most important thing of all, that God is God, that He is on the throne, that He is sovereign over every shaking thing, that nothing that frightens you is outside His control. The stillness is the doorway through which that knowledge returns. When you stop striving and grow still, you make room to remember who God is. And when you remember who God is, that He is God and you are not, and He is in control of all the things that are beyond your control, the fear begins to lose its grip. There is a deep mercy in the order of these words. God does not say, "Fix everything and then be still." He does not say, "Understand the whole situation, resolve every fear, get your circumstances under control, and then you may rest." He says the opposite. Be still first. In the middle of the unresolved chaos, before anything is fixed, be still. And in that stillness, know that I am God. The stillness comes first, and the knowing comes in the stillness, and the peace comes with the knowing. So when everything in you is striving and racing and desperately trying to control the uncontrollable, hear the gentle command of God cutting through the noise. Be still. Stop. Let go. And know, remember, rest in, be certain of, the fact that I am God and I am in control, and not one of the shaking mountains is shaking outside of my hand. The 30-second promise. My grace is sufficient for thee. There is a particular kind of fear that comes from a weakness we cannot get rid of, a thorn in the flesh, a limitation, a struggle we have prayed about again and again, and that simply will not go away. We fear the future partly because we know we will have to face it, carrying this weakness, this thing we cannot fix in ourselves. Paul knew that fear intimately, and the answer God gave him became the 30-second promise in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Paul had some affliction, he calls it a thorn in the flesh, that tormented him, and 3 times he begged God to take it away. 3 times he pleaded for the weakness to be removed, and 3 times, in effect, God said no. But the no came wrapped in a promise so profound that Paul stopped asking for the thorn to be removed and began, astonishingly, to embrace it. God said, My grace is sufficient for thee. Not I will remove your weakness, but my grace is enough for you in your weakness. The weakness would remain. But into the weakness, God would pour a grace that was more than sufficient to sustain him, grace enough to carry him through, grace enough that the weakness itself became bearable, even fruitful. And then comes the paradox at the very heart of this promise, one of the most counterintuitive truths in all of Scripture. My strength is made perfect in weakness. God's strength is not displayed most powerfully in your strength. It is displayed most powerfully in your weakness. When you are strong, self-sufficient, capable, it is easy to lean on your own strength and never truly know God's. But when you are weak, when you have come to the end of yourself, when you are facing something you clearly cannot handle on your own, that is precisely where God's strength has the room to be made perfect, to be fully displayed, to be revealed for what it is. Your weakness is not the disqualification you fear it is. It is the very place where God's strength shows up most clearly. The emptiness you dread is the space God fills with Himself. This transforms how you face the future with your particular weakness. You may have been thinking, how can I face what is coming when I am this weak, this limited, this prone to failing in exactly this way? And the promise answers, you will face it not on your own sufficiency, but on God's grace, which is sufficient, more than enough. And the very weakness you were afraid would sink you is the place where God's strength will be made perfect, put on display, revealed in power. So Paul reached the point where he could say something almost unthinkable, that he would glory in his weaknesses, take pleasure in them, because when he was weak, then he was strong. Strong with a strength that was not his own, the strength of God made perfect in his weakness. You do not have to fear facing the future weak. God's grace is sufficient for you, and His strength will be made perfect in exactly the place you feel weakest. The 33rd promise, I will never cast out. One of the fears that keeps people awake is the fear of being rejected by God. The quiet dread that when you finally come to Him, especially after all you have done and failed to do, He will turn you away. That you are too far gone, too flawed, too late, too much trouble, and that if you come to Him, He will refuse you. Against that fear, Jesus speaks the 33rd promise in John chapter 6, verse 37. All that the Father giveth me shall come to me, and him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. Focus on that last unbreakable phrase, him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. The words in no wise are emphatic. They mean by no means, under no circumstances, absolutely not. Jesus is making the strongest possible promise. Anyone who comes to Him, He will absolutely not cast out, not turn away, not reject, not send back. There is no exception clause. There is no fine print that reads, unless you have done this particular thing, or unless you have failed too many times, or unless you waited too long, or unless you are too broken. The promise is absolute and unqualified. Whoever comes, He will in no wise cast out. Full stop. Consider how directly this speaks to the fear of rejection, because that fear always whispers a version of you specifically will be the exception. Everyone else might be welcome, but not you. Not after what you did, not with your particular history, not given how many times you have come back with the same failures. The fear insists that there is some line you have crossed, some limit you have exceeded, that puts you outside the reach of welcome. And Jesus dismantles that fear completely with this promise. He does not say most who come, I will receive. He does not say those who come with a good enough record, I will receive. He says him that cometh, anyone, everyone, whoever comes, I will in no wise cast out. You are included in that word him. You, specifically, whoever you are, whatever you have done, however many times you have come before. If you come, you will not be cast out. That is His promise, and He does not break His promises. So if part of your fear is the fear that God will reject you, that you are too flawed to be welcomed, too late to come home, too much of a repeat offender to be received again, let this promise settle the matter forever. The one who has all authority to receive or reject has bound himself with an absolute promise. Whoever comes, He will never cast out. The door is open. It has never been closed to you. You will not be turned away. You cannot come to him and be rejected, because he has promised in the strongest possible terms that he will in no wise cast out anyone who comes. So come. Whatever is coming in your future, come to him with it. Come as many times as you need to, and know with certainty that you will always be received. The 34th promise. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. There is a fear that whispers, maybe God will help me with today. But what about the long haul? What about the years of difficulty ahead? What if I run out of strength before the trouble runs out? For that fear of the long road, God gave a promise buried in Moses' final blessing over the tribes of Israel. In Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 25, as thy days, so shall thy strength be. Hold that simple, beautiful equation in your mind. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. It means that your strength will be matched to your days, that for whatever each day requires, the strength for that day will be supplied. However long the road, however many hard days lie ahead, the promise is that strength will be given in proportion to the need day by day. For as long as the days continue, you will not be given a lump sum of strength today and then left to ration it out anxiously across an uncertain future. You will be given strength that matches your days, a fresh supply, adequate to each day's demand, arriving faithfully as each day arrives. This directly addresses the fear of endurance, the fear that you can perhaps make it through today, but that you will surely collapse somewhere in the long months or years of difficulty ahead. And that fear is based on a mistaken calculation. It looks at the whole long road stretching out ahead, adds up all the strength that the entire journey will require, compares that enormous total to the small amount of strength you feel you have right now, and concludes in terror, I will never make it. I don't have enough. I will run out. But that calculation is wrong, because you are never asked to carry the strength for the whole road at once. You are only ever asked to walk today's portion of it on today's supply of strength. And tomorrow, when tomorrow's portion of the road arrives, tomorrow's strength will arrive with it. As your days, so shall your strength be. The supply keeps pace with the need every single day for as long as the days last. Think of how God provided for his people crossing the wilderness, not with one enormous delivery of provisions at the start, but with fresh manna every single morning, enough for that day, renewed with each new dawn, faithful across 40 years. That is the pattern of God's provision, and it is the pattern of his strength. He does not overwhelm you with the whole future's worth of grace all at once, in a way you could not even carry. He gives you what you need, when you need it, in perfect proportion to the day's demand. So when you look down the long road ahead and fear you will not have the strength to endure it, remember this promise. You do not need the strength for the whole road today. You need only today's strength for today's steps, and that is exactly what you have been given. And when the harder days come, if they come, the strength for those days will be there when those days arrive, matched precisely to what they require. As your days, so shall your strength be. You will not run out, because the supply is renewed as faithfully as the sunrise for every day you are given. The 35th promise, he giveth power to the faint. Closely related and worth its own dwelling place is the promise that speaks directly to the moment when you have already run out, when you are not merely anticipating exhaustion, but are, right now, completely spent. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Look at who this promise is specifically for, the faint and them that have no might. This is not a promise for the strong. It is not for those who still have reserves to draw on. It is precisely for those who have nothing left, the faint, the ones who have collapsed, the ones who have reached the absolute end of their own strength and have no might remaining at all. If that is where you are right now, if you are not just tired but depleted, not just weary but utterly spent, with genuinely nothing left in your own tank, then this promise has your name on it. It was written for exactly this moment. God gives power to the faint, not to the energetic, to the faint. And to those who have no might left, he increases strength. He adds to a supply that had dropped all the way to zero. This is such an important truth for the frightened and exhausted soul to grasp, because so often we believe deep down that God helps those who help themselves, that we have to muster some strength of our own first, get ourselves at least part way there, and then perhaps God will meet us and add a little to our effort. But this promise says something radically different. It says God's power is given specifically to those who have no power of their own. His strength flows precisely to the point of total weakness. You do not have to bring him a partial supply for him to top off. You can come to him completely empty, with nothing at all, having run entirely dry. And that emptiness is not a barrier to his help. It is the very condition his help is designed for. He gives power to the faint. He increases the strength of those who have no might. The emptier you are, the more room there is for him to fill. So if you have reached the point where you cannot go on, where you are not being dramatic but simply telling the truth when you say you have nothing left, do not despair and do not believe the lie that your total exhaustion has put you beyond God's help. The opposite is true. Your faintness is exactly the place where his power is given. Your having no might is exactly the condition to which he brings increased strength. Come to him empty. Bring him your depletion, your collapse, your utter lack of any strength of your own, and receive what he has promised to give precisely to those in your condition, power to the faint, and increased strength to the one who has no might left at all. He specializes in filling the empty, and he will fill you. The 36th promise. The angel of the Lord encampeth round about. There is a comfort in knowing that you are not only held by God, but actively guarded by him. That there is protection surrounding you, watching over you, even when you cannot see it. The 36th promise speaks of exactly this guardianship in Psalm 34, verse 7. The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them. Consider the military image at the heart of this promise. Encampeth round about. To encamp around something is what an army does to protect what is inside. It surrounds it on every side, forming a ring of defense, a perimeter of protection that an enemy would have to break through to reach what is within. And the psalmist says that the angel of the Lord encamps like this around those who fear God, surrounds them, forms a ring of protection around them, stations himself as a guard on every side. This is not a distant, occasional protection. It is an encampment, a settled and continuous surrounding presence, a guard that does not leave its post. Around the person who belongs to God, there is a protective presence encamped, watching every direction from which danger might come. We live largely unaware of this dimension of reality, the unseen protection that surrounds the people of God. We see the visible threats. We rarely see the invisible protection. But this promise pulls back the curtain for a moment and shows us what is really there, that the frightened believer who feels so exposed and unguarded is in fact surrounded by the protective presence of God, encamped round about, standing watch. There is far more protecting you than you can see. The dangers you fear are real, but so is the guard that surrounds you. And the guard is stronger than the danger. You are not as exposed as you feel. You are ringed about on every side by a protection you cannot see, but that is nonetheless entirely real, stationed there by the God who watches over you. This does not mean that nothing hard will ever reach you. We have been honest throughout this teaching that the waters and the fire are sometimes on the path God leads us through. The protection of God is not always the prevention of every difficulty. Often it is a preservation through the difficulty, a keeping of your soul intact, even when your circumstances are hard. but it does mean that you are never facing anything alone and unguarded. The angel of the Lord encamps round about those who fear him. Whatever comes at you must come past the encampment of God. And nothing gets through that ring of protection except what he, in his wisdom and love, permits to pass for purposes that will ultimately serve your good. So rest tonight in this. You are surrounded. You are guarded. There is an encampment of divine protection ringed about your life, and it does not sleep, and it does not leave its post, and it stands between you and every danger you fear. The 37th promise: I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Beneath the fear of the future often lies an even older wound, the fear that we are not truly loved, or that whatever love we have received is fragile, conditional, and could be withdrawn if we disappoint enough, fail enough, or simply exist too long as our flawed selves. Against that deep ache, God speaks the 37th promise in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 3. The Lord hath appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love, therefore with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Hold on to that word, everlasting. God's love for you is not a love that began at some point and could therefore end at some point. It is an everlasting love, a love without beginning and without end, a love that reaches back before you were born and stretches forward beyond the end of all things. This is not the fragile, conditional love that human beings so often experience, the love that has to be earned and can be lost, the love that is given when we perform well and withdrawn when we fail. God's love for you is of an entirely different order. It is everlasting. It does not depend on your performance because it did not begin with your performance. It was there before you did anything at all, good or bad. And because it did not begin with anything you did, it cannot end with anything you do. An everlasting love has no expiration date and no conditions that could void it. It simply is, and it simply continues forever. And notice what flows from that everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. The word drawn is the language of gentle pulling, of tender attraction, of being drawn near. Because God has loved you with an everlasting love, he has been drawing you toward himself with loving kindness, with gentle, persistent, tender care. Every good thing that has ever pulled you toward him, every moment of longing for something more, every stirring of your heart toward the light, that was the everlasting love of God, drawing you with loving kindness. He has been reaching for you your entire life, drawing you gently toward himself, motivated by a love that has no beginning and no end. This matters enormously for the fear of the future, because so much of that fear is quietly rooted in the suspicion that we are ultimately on our own, unloved at the deepest level, that if things go badly enough, even God's care for us might run out. And this promise cuts that suspicion off at the root. You are loved with an everlasting love. It will not run out. It cannot be exhausted by your failures or your fears or the length of your struggles. Whatever the future holds, it holds no power to change the everlasting love with which God loves you. You will walk into tomorrow and every tomorrow after it, held by a love that was set on you before the foundation of the world and will not release you through all eternity. That love is the ground under everything, and it is everlasting. The 38th promise: Lo, I am with you always. Among the very last words Jesus spoke on this earth before he ascended and was taken from the disciples' sight was a promise meant to carry them and every believer after them through everything that would ever come. Matthew chapter 28 verse 20, Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. These are the final words of Matthew's gospel, and there is deep significance in the fact that Jesus chose to end with this, not with instructions, not with a warning, not with a prophecy, but with a promise of his presence. Lo, I am with you always. He was about to depart visibly. His physical presence would no longer walk beside them on the roads of Galilee. And into that departure, into the disciples' fear of being left without him, he speaks the promise that changes everything. I am with you always, not sometimes, not when things are going well, not only in the good seasons, always, every day, every hour, every circumstance, without a single gap or interruption, all the way to the very end. Look at that beautiful, sweeping word. Always, always. There is no situation excluded from it. There is no day of your life, however dark, however frightening, on which this promise does not hold. When you were at your lowest, he was with you. When you face your hardest day still to come, he will be with you. In the ordinary Tuesday and in the crisis that arrives without warning, in the seasons of joy and in the valley of the shadow of death, always. And notice the extent of it, even unto the end of the world. This is not a promise that runs out at some point, that expires when times get too hard, or that has a limit somewhere down the road. It runs all the way to the end. There is no point in your future, not the end of your own life, not the end of the age itself, at which the presence of Jesus with you comes to a stop. He is with you always, right to the very end, and then, on the other side of that end, forever. This is, in a sense, the promise that gathers up all the others. Because we have seen, again and again throughout this teaching, that the deepest ground of every comfort God gives is his presence. I am with you, echoing through promise after promise as the bedrock beneath them all. And here, in the final words of the gospel, Jesus seals it with a permanence that reaches to the end of time. Whatever is coming, he will be with you in it, always, without exception, all the way to the end and beyond. So you never step into any future alone. You never face any coming thing by yourself. The risen Christ, who has all authority in heaven and on earth, has promised to be with you always, even unto the end of the world. And he is with you now, in this very moment, as near as your own breath, and he is not going anywhere. The 39th promise. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart. Sometimes the future frightens us most when our hearts are already broken, when we are approaching what is coming not from a place of strength, but from a place of grief, already wounded, already crushed by something that has happened. For those who face the future with a broken heart, God gives the 39th promise in Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. There is a tenderness in this promise that the wounded heart desperately needs to hear. Because when we are broken, one of the cruelest lies that whispers to us is that God is far away, that our brokenness has somehow distanced us from him, that he draws near to the strong and the joyful and the whole, and that, in our shattered state, we are somehow beneath his notice or beyond his reach, and this promise declares the exact opposite. The Lord is nigh, the Lord is near, close, right at hand, unto them that are of a broken heart. Far from being distant from the broken-hearted, God is especially near to them. Your brokenness does not push him away, it draws him close. The very condition you feared might separate you from God is the condition that brings him nearest of all. Think about how this reflects the very heart of God. He is not drawn primarily to the impressive, the strong, the self-sufficient. He is drawn to the broken, the crushed, the contrite. He comes close to the ones who are shattered. This is who he is, a God who, as another psalm puts it, is close to the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds, a God who does not despise a broken and contrite heart, but treasures it, a God who moves towards suffering rather than away from it. So if your heart is broken right now, if you come to the fear of the future already wounded, already grieving, already crushed by something that has cracked you open, Hear this promise with all its tenderness. You are not far from God in your brokenness. You are, in fact, in the very place where He draws nearest. He is nigh to you. He is close to you. He is right beside your broken heart, nearer than He would be if you were whole and strong and had no need of Him at all. And notice the second half. And saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. He does not merely stand near the broken, He saves them. He rescues them. He does not come close only to observe the brokenness with sympathy and then leave it as it is. He comes close to save, to heal, to restore, to bind up what has been shattered. So your brokenness is not only the place where God is nearest, it is the place where His saving, healing work is done. So do not hide your broken heart from God, and do not believe that it disqualifies you from His presence. Bring it to Him exactly as it is, shattered and grieving and afraid. He is nigh to the broken-hearted. He is near to you right now in your brokenness, closer than you know. And He has come not only to be near your broken heart, but to save it, to heal it, to bind it up, and to carry you through whatever is coming with a tenderness reserved especially for the wounded. The 40th promise. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. At the 2/3 mark of our journey, we come to one of the most beloved and practical passages in all of Scripture, a promise that tells you not only what God will do, but exactly how to position your heart to receive it. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. Begin with the command that opens it. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Not partial trust. Not trust held in reserve, hedged with backup plans and escape routes. Trust with all your heart, a complete, wholehearted leaning of your entire weight onto God. And then the crucial counterpart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. Here is where so much of our fear is generated. We lean on our own understanding. We try to figure it all out ourselves, to trace every possible outcome, to comprehend the whole situation and control it through the power of our own reasoning. And because our understanding is limited, because we cannot actually see the future or control the outcomes, leaning on our own understanding leaves us anxious and afraid, standing on a foundation far too small to bear the weight. The command is to stop leaning there, to take your weight off the frail support of your own limited comprehension and place it fully on God, whose understanding is complete. This does not mean God asks you to abandon your mind or stop thinking. It means He asks you to stop making your own limited understanding the ultimate foundation of your security. Your understanding is real but partial. It can see a little way but not to the end. It can grasp some things but not the whole. And a heart that leans its full weight on something that limited will always be anxious, because it can feel, at some level, that the support is not adequate to the load. So the invitation is to transfer your trust, to lean not on your own small understanding, but on the God who understands everything, who sees the end from the beginning, who holds the whole of your life and your future in full view. When your trust rests there, on a foundation that is fully adequate to bear it, the anxiety of trying to comprehend and control everything yourself begins to lift. And then comes the beautiful promise. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. To acknowledge God in all your ways means to bring Him into everything, to walk through your life in continual awareness of Him, inviting Him into every decision, every situation, every path. And the promise attached is that He will direct your paths. He will make your way straight. He will guide you. So the fear of choosing wrong, of missing the way, of not being able to see the path ahead, that fear is answered by this promise. You are not responsible for seeing the whole path yourself and navigating it flawlessly through the power of your own understanding. You are responsible only to trust Him wholeheartedly and to acknowledge Him in your ways. and he takes responsibility for directing your paths. So take your weight off your own understanding tonight. Stop trying to carry the impossible burden of figuring it all out and controlling every outcome. Lean with your whole heart on the God who sees the whole of it. Acknowledge him in your ways and trust the promise he will direct your paths. The 41st promise, delight thyself also in the Lord. There is a promise that speaks to the fears we carry about our deepest desires, the longings of our hearts that we are afraid will never be fulfilled, the good things we ache for and fear we will never receive. It is found in Psalm 37, verses 4 and 5. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. This promise is often quoted in a way that misses its depth, as though it were a formula for getting whatever you want. Delight in God, and he will hand you everything on your wish list. But the promise is far richer and far more transformative than that. Look at what it actually says. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. The delighting comes first. And here is the key. When you truly delight yourself in the Lord, when your deepest joy and satisfaction are found in him, something happens to the desires of your heart themselves. They begin to be shaped by that delight. As you delight in God, your desires increasingly align with his heart, until the desires of your heart become desires he delights to fulfill. The promise is not that God becomes a means to your ends, but that as you find your delight in him, your very desires are transformed and then satisfied. And this speaks to a real fear, the fear that the deep longings of your heart will go forever unmet, that you will reach the end of your life with the truest aches of your soul unfulfilled. This promise offers a different vision, that when your delight is anchored in God himself, the deepest desires of your heart find their fulfillment. Because the deepest desire of every human heart, underneath all the surface longings, is finally for God himself, for his presence, his love, his life. And that desire he always fulfills. He gives himself to those who delight in him. And in giving himself, he satisfies the truest and deepest desire of the heart, the one beneath all the others. Then the promise adds a further movement. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. To commit your way to the Lord is to roll the whole burden of your path onto him, to hand over the outcome, to entrust your future and your desires and your way into his hands. And the promise is that he shall bring it to pass. You do not have to force your own desires into being through anxious striving. You commit your way to him, you trust him, and he acts. He brings it to pass, in his way and in his time, which is always better than yours. So to the heart that is afraid its deepest longings will never be met, this promise says, delight in God, and watch your desires be both transformed and fulfilled. Commit your way to him, trust him, and he will bring it to pass. You do not have to grasp and strive and force. You have only to delight and commit and trust, and leave the bringing to pass to the God who loves to give good things to his children. The 42nd promise, in quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. There is a promise that speaks directly to where our real strength comes from in the face of fear, and it stands in sharp contrast to the frantic, striving way we usually try to handle our anxieties. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 15, For thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, In returning and rest shall ye be saved, in quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Look at the 4 words that describe the source of true strength and salvation here: returning, rest, quietness, confidence. Every one of them runs completely counter to the way anxiety operates. Anxiety is all about frantic activity, restless striving, noisy inner turmoil, and desperate self-reliance. But God says the strength you need is found in the opposite direction, in returning to him rather than running everywhere else, in rest rather than exhausting effort, in quietness rather than inner noise, in confident trust rather than anxious striving. This is one of the great reversals of the spiritual life, that strength is found not in doing more, but in resting more deeply in God, not in striving harder, but in trusting more completely. And there is a poignant detail in this verse that we should not miss. Immediately after God says this, the very next words in Isaiah record the people's response, "And ye would not." God offered them strength through quietness and confident trust in him, and they refused it. They preferred their own frantic strategies, their own alliances and schemes and desperate efforts to save themselves. They would not rest, they would not return, they would not find their strength in quietness and confidence. And there is a warning in that for us, because we so often do the same thing. God offers us strength through resting in him, through quiet trust, through returning to him and ceasing our striving. And we, too, so often will not. We prefer to keep striving, keep controlling, keep frantically working the problem, because resting in God feels too passive, too vulnerable, too much like doing nothing. But the promise stands, whether or not we accept it. In returning and rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. The invitation is to accept what the people of Isaiah's day refused, to actually take God up on this offer, to find your strength where he says it is found. When you are afraid, the instinct is to strive harder, to grip tighter, to fill the silence with frantic activity and the mind with restless problem-solving. But God says, "Return to me. Rest. Be quiet. Trust with confidence." That is where your strength actually is, not in the striving, which only exhausts you further, but in the quiet, confident return to God. So when fear drives you toward frantic effort, hear this promise and choose the opposite. Return. Rest. Grow quiet. Place your confidence in him, and discover that the strength you were exhausting yourself trying to manufacture was available all along, in the quietness and confidence you kept refusing to enter. The 43rd promise, the eternal God is thy dwelling place. We touched earlier on the everlasting arms beneath us. Now we turn to the promise of God as our dwelling place, our home. Where do you live in the deepest sense? What is the place your soul calls home, the place you return to, the place that holds you? The 43rd promise answers, drawing on the words of Moses in Psalm 90, verse 1. Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. To call God our dwelling place is to say something profound about where the soul is meant to live. A dwelling place is home, the place of belonging, of shelter, of rest, the place you return to at the end of the day, and where you are safe from the weather outside. And Moses, who himself had no settled home for most of his life, who wandered 40 years in a wilderness with no fixed address, no permanent house, no country of his own, reached for this image to describe God. Though he had no earthly dwelling place that lasted, he had a dwelling place that never changed: God himself. In all generations, across every wandering and every displacement and every loss of earthly home, God had been the dwelling place of his people. He was the home that could not be taken away, the belonging that did not depend on any building or land or circumstance. This speaks powerfully to the fear of the future, because so much of that fear is bound up with the fear of losing our security, our stability, our sense of home and place and belonging. We fear the future partly because it threatens to take away the things that make us feel settled and safe. But this promise offers a home that the future cannot touch. If your dwelling place is God himself, if the deepest home of your soul is not in any circumstance or possession or earthly stability, but in God, then no change in your circumstances can make you homeless. You can lose much and still be at home, because your true home is not a place that can be lost, but a person who cannot be taken from you. The eternal God is your dwelling place, And an eternal dwelling place cannot be foreclosed on, cannot be swept away, cannot be lost to any change or catastrophe the future might bring. So when the future threatens your sense of security and belonging, when you fear losing the things that make you feel settled and safe, return in your heart to your true dwelling place. Make your home in God. Learn to live there, not as an occasional visitor who drops in during emergencies, but as a permanent resident whose deepest belonging is in Him. Because when God is your dwelling place, you carry home with you wherever you go. You are never homeless, never without shelter, never without a place of belonging and rest, because the eternal God, who has been the dwelling place of His people in all generations, is your home. And He is a home that no future can ever take away. The 44th promise, He shall cover thee with His feathers. There is a promise of protection so tender, so intimate in its imagery, that it has become one of the most cherished passages for those who are afraid. Psalm 91, verses 4 through 6, He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Consider the image at the heart of this promise. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. This is the picture of a mother bird, sheltering her young beneath her wings, drawing them in close against her body, covering them completely with her feathers so that they are hidden, warmed, and protected from every danger. It is one of the most tender images of protection in all of nature. The little ones, too small and weak to defend themselves, are simply gathered in under the wings, pressed close to the one who loves them, sheltered by her very body from whatever threatens outside. And this is the image God chooses for how He protects those who take refuge in Him. He covers you with His feathers. He draws you in under His wings. You are not left exposed to the elements of your fear. You are gathered in close, hidden beneath the covering of God Himself. And notice what this sheltered position produces. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. The psalm names the whole spectrum of fear, the terror by night, that formless dread that comes in the darkness when we cannot sleep and our fears grow enormous, and the arrow that flies by day, the concrete dangers and threats that come at us in the light. Both kinds of fear, the vague nighttime dread and the specific daytime threat, are answered by the same shelter. Under the wings of God, covered by His feathers, you need not be afraid of either. Not because the terror and the arrows do not exist, but because you are sheltered from them, hidden beneath a covering they cannot penetrate, held close against the one whose truth is your shield and your defense. There is such comfort here for the frightened soul, especially in the night. So many fears come at night. The terror by night is named specifically because the darkness is when dread so often grows strongest, when we lie awake and the fears of what is coming loom largest and most overwhelming. And into that specific nighttime terror, this promise speaks. You are covered. You are under His wings. You can rest there in the dark, sheltered and warm and safe, pressed close against the God who has gathered you in. So tonight, if the terror comes in the darkness, picture yourself where this promise places you, not exposed and alone in the frightening night, but tucked in under the wings of God, covered by His feathers, held close against Him, sheltered by His truth. The terror by night cannot reach you there. You are covered. Rest under His wings, and do not be afraid. The 45th promise, I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee. We return now, 3/4 of the way through our journey, to gather up and dwell more fully on a phrase we touched at the very beginning, because it deserves its own place among these 60 promises. From Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, comes the triple assurance, I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. We have already seen how this promise opens with fear not, For I am with thee. But now dwell on what God specifically commits to do, because he does not leave his presence as an abstraction. He spells out 3 concrete actions, each one meeting a different dimension of the frightened heart's need. I will strengthen thee for the times when you feel too weak, when the fear has drained you and you do not have the inner resources to stand. God commits to putting strength into you, his own strength, poured into your weakness. I will help thee for the times when the task before you is beyond your ability, when you cannot do what needs to be done on your own. God commits to actively helping, to coming alongside and doing with you and for you what you cannot do by yourself. And I will uphold thee for the times when you cannot even stand, when your own legs have given way and you are falling. God commits to holding you up, bearing your weight, keeping you from collapsing when you have no strength left to keep yourself upright. Notice how these 3 actions correspond to increasing degrees of need. Strengthening is for when you are weak but still standing. Helping is for when the task exceeds you but you are still engaged in it. Upholding is for when you can no longer hold yourself up at all and must be carried. God meets every level. There is no degree of need that outruns his commitment. Whether you are merely weakened or genuinely overwhelmed or completely collapsed, there is a matching promise. He will strengthen, he will help, he will uphold. Whatever level of weakness the future brings you to, God has already committed to meet you there with exactly the kind of aid that level of weakness requires. And all of it is done with the right hand of my righteousness. The right hand, again, is the hand of strength and power, and it is the hand of his righteousness, meaning that his holding of you is not a fragile, uncertain thing, but is backed by the full integrity and faithfulness of his character. When God upholds you with the right hand of his righteousness, you are being held by a power that is both infinitely strong and completely committed, a strength that will not fail and a faithfulness that will not waver. So take these 3 verbs and hold them against your fear of what is coming. Whatever it brings, however weak it leaves you, God has promised, I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you. And he upholds with a hand that has never once let go of anyone it has taken hold of. The 46th promise. When my father and my mother forsake me. There is a fear that reaches back to the most primal places in the human heart. The fear of being abandoned by the very people who are supposed to love us most, or the grief of having already been abandoned by them. For that deep wound, God gives the 46th promise in Psalm 27, verse 10. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. There is something almost startling about the honesty of this promise. It does not pretend that the people who should love us always will. It acknowledges plainly the possibility, and for many people the reality, that even a father and a mother, the 2 people most bound by nature and duty to love and protect a child, might forsake them. This is one of the deepest wounds a human being can carry, to have been let down, abandoned, or failed by a parent, by the very people whose love was supposed to be the most certain and unconditional of all. And the psalm does not minimize this wound or pretend it away. It names it directly, when my father and my mother forsake me. But then it speaks the promise that meets the wound. Then the Lord will take me up. The word suggests gathering up, taking in, receiving to oneself, the way you would gather up a child who has been left, drawing them into your arms and taking responsibility for them. So the promise is this: even in the worst case, even if the people who should most certainly have loved you have failed you, even if you have known the specific grief of being forsaken by a parent, there is one who will not forsake you. When they let you down, God takes you up. His love steps into the exact gap left by the love that failed. Where the human love that should have held you gave way, the love of God is there to gather you in, to receive you, to take you as his own. This speaks to a fear and a wound that many carry silently for their entire lives. If you have known the pain of being failed by those who should have loved you, if there is an old abandonment in your story that has shaped your fears ever since, teaching you that love is unreliable and that you might be left again, then this promise is spoken directly to your wound. The failure of human love, however deep it cut, is not the final word over your life. There is a love that does not fail, a Father who does not forsake, who steps into the very gap left by the love that let you down and takes you up. He gathers you in. He receives you as his own. And his taking you up is not fragile or conditional like the love that failed you. It is the everlasting love of God, and it will never, ever leave you as you were left before. When they forsake you, he takes you up, and he never puts you back down. The 47th promise, thou shalt hide them in the secret of thy presence. There is a promise about refuge so intimate that it speaks of a hidden, secret place where God shelters those he loves from everything that would harm them. Psalm 31 verse 20, thou shalt hide them in the secret of thy presence from the pride of man. Thou shalt keep them secretly in a pavilion from the strife of tongues. Consider the phrase, the secret of thy presence. There is a hidden place, a secret shelter, and it is located in the presence of God himself. This is a place of concealment and safety where God hides those he loves away from the things that would wound them, from the pride of man, from the strife of tongues, from the harshness and cruelty and conflict of a hostile world. It is as though, in the very presence of God, there is a secret inner chamber, a hidden sanctuary, into which God draws his own and shelters them from the storms raging outside. And notice the specific threats named, the pride of man and the strife of tongues. These are the wounds that come from other people, from arrogance and cruelty, from words that cut, from the conflicts and criticisms and hostilities that human beings inflict on one another. For those specific wounds, God provides a specific shelter, the secret of his presence. Many of our deepest fears and hurts come precisely from other people, from what they might say, from their judgment and their cruelty and their words. The strife of tongues is a real and painful thing. Words can wound as deeply as any weapon, and the fear of others' hostility, criticism, and cruelty is one of the heavier burdens the human heart carries. And into that specific fear, this promise offers a specific refuge. There is a secret place in the presence of God where the strife of tongues cannot reach you. When you dwell in his presence, drawn into that secret shelter, the words and the pride and the cruelty of others lose their power to reach the deepest part of you. You are hidden. You are kept secretly in a pavilion, a sheltered, protected place where the strife cannot penetrate. This is a refuge worth learning to run into. When the words of others wound you, when you fear their judgment or their cruelty, when the strife of tongues rages around you, there is a secret place you can go. You can withdraw into the presence of God, into that hidden shelter where he keeps his own, and find that in his presence there is a peace and a security that the hostility outside cannot touch. Let the world rage and criticize and wound. In the secret of his presence, you are hidden and safe. So when you are afraid of what others might say or do, when the strife of tongues threatens to overwhelm you, remember that God has provided a secret place. Run into it. Hide in the secret of his presence and discover the shelter that keeps you safe from every arrow that human hostility can fire. The 48th promise. Fear not, little flock. Among the most tender things Jesus ever said to his anxious followers is a promise that addresses at its very root the anxiety about provision and the future, the worry about whether we will have what we need, whether we will be taken care of, whether the future holds enough. Luke chapter 12, verse 32, Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Listen first to the tenderness of the address. Fear not, little flock. There is such gentleness in those words. Jesus calls his followers a little flock, small, vulnerable, dependent, the way sheep are. He is not scolding them for their fear or demanding they toughen up. He is speaking to them the way a shepherd speaks softly to frightened sheep, the way a parent speaks to an anxious child. Fear not, little one. It's all right. You don't need to be afraid. The tone itself is a comfort before the content even arrives. This is the voice of God toward his frightened people, not harsh, not impatient, but tender, gentle, reassuring, calling them by an affectionate name and telling them softly to set their fear down. And then comes the reason, and it is breathtaking in its generosity, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Consider the scale of what is being promised here. If you are anxious about the future, about whether you will have enough, whether you will be provided for, whether your needs will be met, Jesus points you to something that dwarfs every such concern. Your Father intends to give you the kingdom, the whole kingdom, everything. And notice how he describes the giving. It is your Father's good pleasure to give it. It delights him. It is not a grudging gift, extracted reluctantly, given with a sigh. It is his joy, his pleasure, his delight to give his children the kingdom. God is not stingy toward you. He is not reluctant. He gives with gladness, with pleasure, with the joy of a father who loves to provide lavishly for his children. And here is the logic of comfort in this promise. If it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the entire kingdom, then how could you possibly need to be anxious about the smaller things, the daily needs, the provisions, the future? The one who delights to give you the kingdom, the greatest gift of all, the whole inheritance of eternity, will surely not neglect the smaller matters of your daily provision. If he gladly gives the greater, he will not withhold the lesser. The God who intends with delight to give you everything, the whole kingdom, can certainly be trusted with the details of your tomorrow. So fear not, little flock. The tenderness of that address and the immensity of that promise are together meant to lift the anxiety about provision and the future clean off your shoulders. Your Father delights to give you the kingdom. Rest in a Father like that. You are provided for by one whose good pleasure it is to give his children everything. The 49th promise. The peace of God shall keep your hearts. We spoke earlier of Paul's instruction to be anxious for nothing, but to bring everything to God in prayer. Now we dwell on the specific promise attached to that practice, the guardian peace itself, because it deserves its own place among these 60 assurances. Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. We have already noted that this peace passes all understanding, that it cannot be explained by your circumstances, that it settles over you in a way that makes no logical sense given what you are facing. But dwell now on that word, keep, because it holds the heart of the promise. As we noted, it is a military term, to garrison, to mount a guard, to post sentries around something precious to protect it from attack. And what does this peace stand guard over? Your hearts and minds. These are precisely the two places where fear does its damage. Fear attacks the heart, the seat of your emotions, your courage, your capacity to feel safe and loved. And fear attacks the mind, the seat of your thoughts, flooding it with anxious scenarios and racing catastrophic imaginations. Your heart and your mind are the battleground where the war against fear is fought. And the promise is that the peace of God will stand guard over both. Picture it. Around your heart, a garrison of God's peace, guarding the gate against the assaults of fear and despair. Around your mind, sentries of God's peace, standing watch against the invasion of anxious thoughts and catastrophic imaginations. The peace of God posts itself as a protective guard around the very faculties that fear most wants to capture. This is not a peace you have to generate and then anxiously maintain by your own effort. It is a peace that actively guards you, that does the protecting itself, that stands watch over your heart and mind so that you do not have to keep frantic vigil yourself. You do the turning toward God in prayer. The peace of God does the guarding. And notice the channel through which this guarding peace comes, through Christ Jesus. It is not a vague, impersonal serenity. It comes through Christ, through relationship with Him, through His presence, through what He has done and who He is. The peace that guards your heart and mind is the peace of God delivered through Jesus, flowing from your union with Him. So when fear lays siege to your heart, when anxious thoughts mass at the gates of your mind, remember that you have a guardian. You are not defending the walls alone. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, is garrisoned around your heart and your mind, standing watch through Christ Jesus, guarding the very places where fear tries to break in. Bring your anxieties to God in prayer, as He has instructed, and then trust the peace He gives to do exactly what He has promised it will do, to keep your heart and mind, to stand guard over you, to protect the deepest places of you from the assaults of fear. The 50th promise, the Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. We have reached the 50th promise, and it is one of the most extraordinary in all of Scripture. Extraordinary because it reveals not only how God feels toward you, but what God does in response to you, in a way that few passages anywhere in the Bible dare to describe. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17. The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in His love. He will joy over thee with singing. Take it phrase by phrase, because every clause is a treasure. The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. God is not distant from you. He is in the midst of you, right in the center of your life and your situation, and He is mighty, powerful, strong, more than able to handle whatever you face. He will save. That is His disposition toward you, to save, to rescue, to deliver. But then the promise moves into territory so tender it can be hard to believe. He will rejoice over thee with joy. God rejoices over you. He's glad about you. You're not merely tolerated by God, not merely put up with. You are rejoiced over, a source of joy and gladness to the heart of God Himself. And then, most astonishing of all, He will rest in His love. He will joy over thee with singing. Sit with that final image, because it may be the most beautiful picture of God's heart toward you in all of Scripture. He will joy over thee with singing. God sings over you. The Creator of the universe, the Almighty, the one who spoke the stars into being, sings, and He sings over you, out of the joy He takes in you. Think about when people sing out of love. A mother sings over her infant, holding the child close, delighting in them, soothing them with a song that comes straight from her love. And that is the image God chooses for Himself in relation to you. He does not merely tolerate you or dutifully care for you. He delights in you so deeply that He sings over you, the way a mother sings over the child she loves, out of sheer joy and tender love. Consider what this does to the fear of the future. So often our fear is rooted at the deepest level in a suspicion that we are not truly loved, not truly delighted in, that God's care for us is grudging or distant or conditional. And this promise shatters that suspicion completely. The God who is in the midst of you, mighty to save, is a God who rejoices over you, who rests in His love for you, who sings over you with joy. You are not merely safe with Him, you are treasured, delighted in, sung over. And a person who is loved like that, sung over by Almighty God Himself, held in a love so glad it breaks into song, has a foundation beneath every fear that nothing in the future can shake. Whatever is coming, it is coming to someone God sings over. Let that be the truth you carry into every fearful place. The mighty God in the midst of you delights in you so completely that He rejoices over you with singing. The 51st promise. Let not your heart be troubled. As Jesus prepared his disciples for the most frightening thing they would ever face, his death and departure, he gave them a promise about the future that reaches far beyond this life and answers the deepest fear of all. John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Jesus begins with the gentle command, let not your heart be troubled. And then he gives the disciples something to anchor their untroubled hearts to, not a vague reassurance, but a concrete promise about the future, about where all of this is finally heading. In my Father's house are many mansions. There is a place being prepared. The future for those who belong to Christ is not an empty void or a fearful unknown. It is a Father's house with room enough for all his children, a home being made ready. And Jesus adds a note of such personal reassurance. If it were not so, I would have told you, as if to say, I would not deceive you about this. I would not let you hope for something that was not real. If there were no such home, no such future, I would have told you plainly, but there is. It is real, and I am going to prepare it for you. And then the heart of the promise, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Jesus is not only preparing a place, he is coming back to bring his people there himself. The future, for those who are his, ends not in loss or darkness or separation, but in reunion, in being received to himself, in being brought to where he is, in being together with him forever. This is the answer to the deepest fear underlying all our fears, the fear of death, the fear of final loss, the fear of what lies beyond the edge of this life. And Jesus answers it with a promise of home, of preparation, of his return, of eternal togetherness in the Father's house. This transforms the fear of the ultimate future, because when the very worst that the future could hold, death itself, the end of this life, has been answered by the promise of a prepared place and a returning Savior who will receive you to himself, then the sting is drawn from the deepest fear of all. Death is not a plunge into darkness for the one who belongs to Christ. It is a going home to a place prepared, received personally by the one who went ahead to make it ready. So let not your heart be troubled. Whatever the future holds in this life, its final destination for you is a Father's house with a prepared place and a Savior who is coming back to bring you there, so that where he is, you may be also forever. That is where your story is heading. And a story heading there has nothing in the end to ultimately fear. The 52nd promise, God shall wipe away all tears. Following naturally from the promise of the Father's house comes the promise of what that final home will actually be like. A promise that reaches to the very end of the Bible and paints the ultimate future of everyone who belongs to God. Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. This is the final destination of the whole story, the ending toward which all of history and all of your life is moving. And look at what it promises. God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Notice the tenderness and intimacy of that image. It is not merely that there will be no more tears. It is that God himself will wipe them away. Picture the gentleness of it. God personally reaching out to wipe the tears from your eyes, the way a loving parent gently wipes away a child's tears, with tenderness and care. This is not a distant God declaring an end to sorrow from afar. It is an intimate God who comes close enough to wipe each tear personally from your face. Every tear you have ever cried, every grief you have carried, every sorrow of your whole life, God himself will wipe them all away with his own hand. And then the promise names, one by one, the great enemies of the human heart and declares their end. There shall be no more death. Death, the final enemy, the source of so much of our fear, gone, abolished, no more. Neither sorrow nor crying, the grief, the weeping, the heartbreak that has marked so much of human life, no more. Neither shall there be any more pain, the suffering, the affliction, the pain of body and soul, no more. Every single thing you fear about the future, every source of the dread that keeps you awake, is named here among the former things that will pass away utterly and forever. In the end, they are all abolished. Death, sorrow, crying, pain, all of it belongs to the former things, and the former things pass away. This is the ultimate answer to the fear of what is coming, because it tells you what is finally, ultimately coming for everyone who belongs to God. Whatever difficult things may come in this life, and some may indeed come, they are not the end of your story. They belong to the former things, and the former things are passing away. The final chapter, the true destination, the place all of this is heading, is a world with no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain, where God himself wipes every tear from your eyes. So when the future frightens you, lift your eyes past it to the final future, the true ending. Hold the fears of tomorrow up against the certainty of that day. Everything you dread belongs to the former things, and the former things are passing away, giving way to an eternity in which God wipes away all tears, and death and sorrow and pain are no more forever. That is where you are heading. Let the certainty of that ending steady you through everything that comes before it. The 53rd promise, I am he that liveth and was dead. For the deepest fear of all, the fear of death itself, whether our own or that of those we love, Christ offers a promise grounded in the most extraordinary event in all of history, his own conquest of death. Revelation chapter 1, verse 18. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, amen, and have the keys of hell and of death. Hear who is speaking and what he claims. This is the risen Christ, and he makes a declaration no one else who has ever lived could truthfully make. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. He died. He genuinely died, really and fully, but he did not stay dead. He is alive, and not just alive, but alive forevermore, alive with a life that can never again be touched by death. Christ went into death itself, the great enemy that every human being fears, the undefeated conqueror of all humanity, and he came out the other side alive, having broken its power, having defeated the one enemy no one had ever defeated. He faced death and won, and then he makes a claim that transforms the fear of death for everyone who trusts him, and have the keys of hell and of death. Keys are a symbol of authority and control. To hold the keys of something is to have power over it, to be the one who decides who is bound and who is freed. And Christ declares that he holds the keys of death itself. Death is no longer an uncontrolled terror ruling over humanity with absolute and final power. Death now answers to Christ. He holds its keys. He has authority over it. It cannot do anything to those who belong to him except what he who has conquered it permits. And for his own, what he permits is not final destruction, but passage through death into everlasting life with him. The enemy that seemed to hold all the keys, that seemed to have the final word over every human life, has been mastered. Its keys hang now on the belt of the risen Christ. This is the ground on which the fear of death is finally overcome. not by pretending death is not real. It is real, and Christ himself truly died, but by trusting the one who died and rose and now holds death's keys. Because he lives, those who belong to him will live also. Because he has conquered death, death cannot hold them. Because he holds the keys, the door that death seemed to lock forever has been opened, and on the other side is not darkness, but everlasting life in his presence. So whether you fear your own death or grieve in fear over the death of those you love, bring that deepest of all fears to the risen Christ. He was dead, and behold, he is alive forevermore, and he holds the keys. The worst that the future could ever hold, death itself, has already been faced and defeated by the one who loves you, and he holds its keys in his own conquering hand. The 54th promise, because I live, ye shall live also. Flowing directly from Christ's conquest of death comes a promise that applies that victory personally and directly to you. John chapter 14, verse 19. Yet a little while, and the world seeth me no more. But ye see me, because I live, ye shall live also. Focus on the unbreakable logic at the heart of this promise. Because I live, ye shall live also. Jesus binds your life to his own. He does not say, if you are good enough, you shall live, or if you earn it, you shall live. He grounds your living entirely in his living. Because he lives, you shall live also. Your eternal life is not anchored to your own performance or your own strength or your own worthiness, all of which are uncertain and fragile. It is anchored to the life of Christ himself, who is alive forevermore and can never die again. Your life is tied to his, like a small boat tied to an immovable anchor. As long as he lives, and he lives forever, your life is secure. This is an extraordinary security to rest in, especially in the face of the fear of death. Because the question that haunts the human heart is, what happens to me? When I face death, when the end comes, what becomes of me? And Jesus answers by linking your fate irreversibly to his own. He has already died and risen. He is already alive forevermore, beyond the reach of death. And he promises that because this is true of him, it will be true of you, that your life is joined to his deathless life, so that his victory over death becomes your victory. His unending life becomes the guarantee of your unending life. You do not face death as one whose outcome is uncertain. You face it as one whose life is bound to the life of the one who has already conquered death and lives forever. And notice the context. Jesus speaks this just as he is about to be taken from the disciples' sight. The world seeth me no more, but ye see me. Even as he departs, even as the world loses sight of him, his own continue to see him, to know him, to be joined to him. His departure is not the end of their relationship with him, but its transformation into something even deeper and more permanent. And out of that abiding connection flows the promise, because I live, ye shall live also. So when the fear of death rises, for yourself or for those you love who belong to Christ, rest in this unbreakable logic. Your life is bound to the life of Jesus. He lives forevermore, and because he lives, you shall live also. Death cannot break a life that is anchored to the deathless life of the risen Christ. His living guarantees yours. The 55th promise, neither death nor life, present nor things to come. We return now to gather up more fully the great promise at the heart of Romans 8, because it speaks so directly to the fear of what is coming that it deserves a second and fuller dwelling. Romans chapter 8, verses 35 through 37. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. Look at the specific list of hardships Paul names here, because it is not abstract. It is concrete, brutal, real. tribulation, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, sword. These are not gentle trials. These are the harshest things life can throw at a person: crushing trouble, deep distress, active persecution, the hunger of famine, the exposure of having nothing, mortal peril, the sword of violent death. Paul lists the very worst that could come, the things any person would rightly fear, and he asks whether any of them has the power to separate us from the love of Christ. And his answer, which he will make explicit in the verses that follow, is a thunderous no. Not one of these things, not the worst that could ever come, can separate you from the love of Christ. And then, in the midst of naming all these terrible possibilities, Paul makes a declaration that transforms how we face them. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. Notice, not we will escape all these things. Not none of these things will ever touch us. Paul is realistic. These hardships may indeed come. What he says is that in them, right in the middle of the tribulation, the peril, the distress, we are more than conquerors, not merely survivors, not merely those who barely make it through, more than conquerors. The victory is not just that we endure these things, but that we triumph through them, that they cannot defeat us, that even the worst of them becomes, in the hands of the God who loves us, something we overcome and are more than conquerors over. And the source of this overwhelming victory is named precisely through him that loved us. We are not more than conquerors through our own strength, our own courage, our own resources. We are more than conquerors through him, through the one who loved us, whose love is the power in which we triumph. So take Paul's list and hold it against your own fears of the future. Whatever specific hardship you dread, trouble, loss, danger, want, even violence and death, Paul has already named it and already declared the verdict over it. It cannot separate you from the love of Christ, and in it, through the one who loves you, you are more than a conqueror. The hard things may come, but they come to one who, through the love of Christ, will not merely survive them but overcome them, more than a conqueror through him that loved you. The 56th promise: if God be for us, who can be against us? Just before that great crescendo about nothing separating us from God's love, Paul asks a question that, once truly grasped, dismantles fear at its foundation. Romans chapter 8, verses 31 and 32. What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? He that spared not his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Consider the question at the center. If God be for us, who can be against us? This is not a claim that no one will ever oppose you, that you will have no enemies and face no opposition. Plenty may be against you in this life. The question is deeper than that. It asks, if the Almighty God, the maker and ruler of everything, is on your side, is for you, then what does it finally matter who or what is against you? What opposition could ultimately prevail against a person whom God himself is for? However great the forces arrayed against you may seem, they are nothing compared to the God who is for you. If he is on your side, the outcome is not finally in doubt, no matter how many or how strong the things that stand against you. The decisive question is not who is against you, but who is for you, and God is for you. But how can you be sure God is really for you? How do you know when fear whispers that maybe God is distant or indifferent, or even against you? Paul anchors the certainty in the most powerful evidence imaginable. He that spared not his own Son, but delivered him up for us all. Here is the proof that God is for you, beyond all possible doubt. He did not spare his own Son. He gave up Jesus, delivered him to the cross for you. This is the ultimate demonstration that God is for you and not against you. He has already made the greatest sacrifice conceivable on your behalf. He gave his own Son, and Paul draws the irresistible conclusion: how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? If God has already given the greatest gift, his own Son, then how could he possibly withhold anything else you truly need? The greater gift guarantees the lesser ones. The God who did not spare his own Son to save you will not now abandon you or fail to provide what you need for the road ahead. This is a foundation for fearlessness that rests not on wishful thinking, but on what God has already done. You do not have to wonder whether God is for you. The cross has settled the question forever. He gave his Son for you. He is for you beyond all doubt. And if he is for you, he who did not spare his own Son, then no opposition, no enemy, no frightening circumstance in your future can finally prevail against you. Who can be against you when God, who gave everything for you, is for you? So when fear tells you that you are facing the future alone, or that the forces against you are too great, answer it with this: God is for me. He proved it at the cross. And if God is for me, the question of who is against me has already lost its power to make me afraid. The 57th promise: the Lord will give strength unto his people. As we near the end of our journey through these promises, we come to a simple and beautiful assurance that joins two of the greatest gifts God gives his people, strength and peace, in a single verse. Psalm 29 verse 11, the Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. There is a lovely completeness in the pairing of these two gifts. The Lord will give strength unto his people, strength for the doing, for the enduring, for the facing of what must be faced, and the Lord will bless his people with peace, peace for the heart, for the inner life, for the quieting of fear. Strength and peace together. These are precisely the two things the frightened heart most needs: strength to endure and face the hard thing, and peace to be at rest even while enduring it. God promises both. He does not give strength without peace, leaving you able to endure, but inwardly tormented. Nor does he give peace without strength, leaving you calm but unable to face what comes. He gives both together, the strength to stand and the peace to be at rest while standing. Notice, too, the certainty of the promise. The Lord will give, not the Lord might give, or the Lord will give if you are worthy enough. The Lord will give. It is stated as a settled fact, a sure thing, a promise that rests on God's own faithfulness rather than on your performance. To his people, those who belong to him, he will give strength, and he will bless with peace. These are not gifts you have to earn or extract or anxiously hope for. They are the promised inheritance of the people of God, given freely by a faithful God to those who are his. And there is a particular beauty in where this verse falls in Psalm 29. The psalm as a whole is a thunderous description of the power of God in the storm, the voice of the Lord breaking the great trees, shaking the wilderness, thundering over the mighty waters. It is a portrait of overwhelming, storm-wielding power. And then at the very end, all that immense power is turned toward one purpose. The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. The same God whose voice thunders over the storm, who wields power that shakes the earth, bends all of that might toward giving strength and peace to his people. The power that governs the storm is the power that steadies you. So when you're afraid, remember that the God who commands the thunder has committed that same immense power to giving you what you need: strength to face what comes, and peace to rest in even as you face it. He will give it. He has promised. The mighty Lord of the storm will give strength to you and bless you with peace. The 58th promise: I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. As Moses handed leadership to Joshua and the people prepared to enter a land full of unknown dangers, God gave a promise that has steadied countless frightened hearts at the threshold of daunting new chapters. Joshua chapter 1, verse 5. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Focus on that closing double assurance. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Two distinct promises are folded together here, and each meets a different fear. I will not fail thee. This addresses the fear that God might let you down, might not come through, might prove inadequate to your need at the critical moment. God promises he will not fail you. He will come through. He will not prove insufficient when you need him most. And I will not forsake thee. This addresses the fear of abandonment, the fear that God might leave you alone in the middle of the hard thing. God promises he will not forsake you. He will not leave. He will not walk away and abandon you to face it alone. Together, these two promises cover the whole territory of the fear. God will neither fail you by proving inadequate, nor forsake you by leaving you alone. He will be both sufficient and present all the way through. And notice the ground on which Joshua was to stand. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. God points Joshua back to the evidence of his faithfulness in the past. Joshua had watched God be with Moses through 40 years of wilderness, through the parting of the sea, through every impossible situation. He had seen with his own eyes that God did not fail Moses and did not forsake him. And God says, the same faithfulness you saw with Moses, you will now experience yourself. This is how God often steadies us for a frightening future, by pointing us to his proven faithfulness in the past. He has been faithful before. You have seen it in your own life and in the lives of others. And the God who was faithful then will be faithful now. His track record is the guarantee of his future faithfulness. This is a promise for the threshold, for the moment when you stand at the edge of a daunting new chapter, facing unknown dangers, uncertain whether you have what it takes to face what lies ahead. Joshua stood at exactly such a threshold, about to lead a nation into a land of giants and walled cities and unknown enemies. And God met him there with this promise: I will not fail you nor forsake you. The same promise meets you at your own threshold. Whatever daunting new chapter you are facing, God will not fail you. He will not forsake you. He will be with you as he has been with his people in every generation, sufficient and present all the way through every day of your life. So step over the threshold. Whatever unknown lies ahead, you do not face it with a God who might fail you or leave you. You face it with the God who has promised, on the evidence of his whole faithful history, that he will not fail you nor forsake you. The 59th promise: fear not, I am the first and the last. As we approach the very end of our journey through these 60 promises, we come to words spoken by the risen Christ to a terrified disciple who had fallen at his feet as though dead. Words that gather up the whole ground of our fearlessness into the majesty of who Christ is. Revelation chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. Fear not, I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive for evermore. The setting is significant. This is John, the same John who had leaned on Jesus at the Last Supper, who had stood at the cross, who had run to the empty tomb, now an old man in exile, granted a vision of the glorified Christ so overwhelming in its majesty that he collapses at Christ's feet as though dead. And the very first thing the risen, glorified Christ does is lay his hand on his frightened friend and say, "Fear not." Even in the fullness of his glory and power, even appearing in a majesty that overwhelms, the heart of Christ toward the frightened is unchanged. Fear not. His first word to the terrified is always the same word of comfort. And then he gives the ground for that fearlessness, not a circumstance, but himself. I am the first and the last. Consider what it means that Christ is the first and the last. He is there at the beginning of all things, and he is there at the end of all things, and he encompasses everything in between. Whatever you are afraid of in the future, he is already there, at the end of it, the last as well as the first. There is no point in time you could travel to, no future you could arrive at, where Christ is not already present as the Lord of it. Your future is not an unknown void where anything might happen beyond God's reach. It is territory already occupied by the one who is the first and the last, who holds the beginning and the end and everything between in his hands. You cannot go anywhere in time where he is not already sovereign, and he grounds it further in what we have already seen. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive for evermore. The one telling you not to fear is the one who has already conquered the worst thing the future could hold. He died, and he rose, and he lives forever. He has been through death itself, and come out victorious on the other side. So when he says, "Fear not," it is not the empty reassurance of someone who does not understand what you are facing. It is the authoritative word of the one who has faced the ultimate enemy and won, who stands at the end of your future as its Lord, who is the first and the last and the living one, who was dead and is alive forevermore. When a Christ like that lays his hand on you and says, "Fear not," you have every ground to obey. So hear him say it to you now, over whatever you are facing. Fear not. I am the first and the last. I have already conquered death, and I am alive forever. And I am there at the end of your every fear, already Lord of all of it. The 60th promise, "Behold, I make all things new." We come now to the 60th and final promise, the last of the 60, and fittingly, it is the promise that stands at the very end of the entire Bible, the note on which all of Scripture closes, the ultimate word about where everything is finally heading. Revelation chapter 21, verse 5. And he that sat upon the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. Behold, I make all things new." Let those words wash over you, because they are the final answer to every fear you have ever carried about what is coming. Not I make some things new, not I patch up and repair a few of the broken things. All things, everything, the whole of creation, the whole of your life, the whole of the broken and groaning and fear-filled world, all of it made new. This is the ultimate destination toward which the entire story of God is moving. A comprehensive renewal, a making new of absolutely everything, in which all that is broken is mended, all that is lost is restored, all that is wrong is set right, and all that has caused fear and grief and pain is swept away and replaced with something new and whole and unbreakably good. And notice who speaks these words. He that sat upon the throne. This is not a hope whispered by someone powerless to bring it about. It is a declaration from the throne of the universe, spoken by the one who has all authority and all power to accomplish exactly what he declares. When the one on the throne says, "I make all things new," it is as good as done, because there is no power that can stand against his word. And notice the reassurance he adds, as if knowing how hard it can be for frightened hearts to believe in such a total renewal. Write, for these words are true and faithful. He commands that it be written down, made permanent, recorded as a certainty. Because these words are true and faithful, not wishful, not uncertain, true and faithful, backed by the character of the God who cannot lie and who has never once failed to keep his word. So here, at the end of our journey through 60 promises, is where it all finally rests. Whatever you are afraid of, whatever is coming that fills you with dread, hold it up against this final throne-spoken true and faithful word. Behold, I make all things new. The brokenness you fear is not the end. The loss you dread does not get the final word. The pain you are bracing for belongs to the old things that are passing away. And the one on the throne has declared in words that are true and faithful that he is making all things new, everything without exception, mended and restored and made whole and good forever. That is where your story is heading. That is the destination toward which even your hardest chapters are moving. And a person walking toward an ending like that, an ending guaranteed by the one on the throne, in words true and faithful, can face everything that comes before it with a settled and unshakable hope. Not because the road holds no hardship, but because the destination holds no fear. Behold, he is making all things new. A final word over you. We have walked together through 60 promises, 60 times that God has bent down toward frightened human beings and told them the truth about who he is and what he will do. And now, as we come to the end, I want you to notice something about the whole of it. Through all 60 promises, running underneath every single one of them like a single golden thread, was one theme that appeared again and again. I am with you. It was there in the very first promise. Fear not, for I am with thee. It was there in the last words of the Gospel of Matthew. I am with you always. It was woven through the valley of the shadow, through the waters and the fire, through the everlasting arms and the sheltering wings, through the God who sings over you and the Christ who holds death's keys. Underneath every specific comfort, the deepest comfort was always the same. You are not alone. God is with you. He has always been with you. He will be with you in everything that is coming. That is the answer to the fear of what is coming, not the removal of every hard thing. We have been honest throughout that the waters and the fire are sometimes on the path, but the unbreakable, promised, proven presence of God in every one of them. You will never face anything alone. You will never walk into any future by yourself. Whatever is coming for you, God is already there, and he will be with you in it, and he will hold you through it, and he will bring you out the other side, and he will not lose you, and he will not fail you, and he will not forsake you, and in the end, he will wipe away every tear and make all things new. That is what these 60 promises, taken together, are telling you. And every one of them is true and faithful. Before we close, let me ask one thing of you. And this is the one thing I'll ask, because if these promises have done anything in you tonight, the most natural response is to want them to reach someone else. Think right now of one person, just one, someone who came to your mind while you were listening. Someone who's afraid of what is coming, someone lying awake with dread, someone carrying a weight of fear they don't know how to set down. You know who they are. A face has probably already surfaced in your mind. Send them this teaching, not with a lecture, not with a long explanation. Just send it with a simple word. I thought of you. I think you need to hear this. That small act might be the thing that reaches them in exactly the moment they needed it most. These promises were never meant to be hoarded. They were meant to be passed from one frightened heart to another. Be the one who passes them on. And if you're able, take a moment to subscribe as well, so that you'll be here for what comes next. It's free, and it's a single tap, and it keeps your seat among all of us who gather here to be reminded again and again that we don't have to be afraid. And in the comments below, I'd love for you to do one last thing. Name the one promise out of all 60 that you most needed to hear tonight. The one that landed somewhere deep, the one you want to carry with you into whatever you're facing. Write it down where the rest of us can see it. Let this become a place where frightened people remind each other of the promises of God. And now, hear this blessing spoken over you as you go. May the God who is with you always, with you in the waters and the fire, with you in the valley and on the mountain, with you in the terror by night and the trouble by day, quiet every fear that has been keeping you awake. May you know, deep in the place where your fear lives, that you are held by everlasting arms that will never let you go. May the peace that passes all understanding stand guard over your heart and your mind tonight. And when tomorrow comes, and whatever it brings, may you walk into it unafraid. Not because there is nothing to fear, but because the one who holds the keys of death, who sings over you with joy, who has promised to make all things new, is walking into it with you and will not leave your side now or ever. You are not alone. You never were, and you never will be. Go in his peace, and do not be afraid of what is coming, for he is already there, and he is holding you still.